Awesome. Alrighty, everybody. Welcome to the Reptile Rejects. On episode 3 here, we got our guest, Kris Painschab from Badlands Herpeticulture. How are you doing here, Kris?
I'm doing exceptional on this Sunday afternoon. How are you guys doing?
I'm pretty good,
I'm doing
thanks.
awesome. Yeah, nice, cool 68-degree day in the shade here in Vancouver. So, yeah, not too
Let's
bad.
go, baby.
Are you really saying it in Fahrenheit here? You're a Canadian, my friend.
Well, it's like 21 or whatever, so a little warmer than
It's
that.
like 30 today. So
Yeah,
It
and
was
the sun is probably like 30.
it was a toasty little 104 in Fs for freedoms. Uh, so yeah, it was 104 today. So I'm not in my garage doing my normal podcasting area. I am in the beautiful spare bedroom of Badlands Herpeticulture with the incubator with me. So we're chilling.
Awesome. What do you have cooking in that incubator right now?
Oh, brother. So yeah, so this season was pretty special. Um, I've always kind of planned out my snakes further. Usually, like I'm already planning for my pairings next year. I'm sure we'll get more into pairings and stuff. Uh, so I made this big mistake. So I talk a lot. So we're gonna roll this back to like COVID era. So during COVID, I couldn't produce enough snakes. Right? I just couldn't. I could hatch 1,000 snakes. I would sell 1,000 snakes. I could hatch 1,000 geckos. I could have sold 1,000 geckos. To me, it was never about the selling. It was kind of about the plan of, excuse me, where I'm going to go, right? What goal do I have this year that I want to reach? That was good up until 2021, 2022, when I overproduced. And I've been doing this for 22 years, more than that, 1998. So, however many of the years those are. That's a long time. I didn't really think about that. That's a lot longer than I thought it was. But yeah, I was 14 years old when I hatched out my first pair of geckos, and I kind of got a little bit more serious, kind of 16 to 18. But anyways, I started doing colubrids pretty heavy about 10 years ago. Probably more dedicated into colubrids than I was into geckos. I still do a bunch of geckos, and we'll talk about some of those. Uh, so I overproduce, and I really stress myself out. So my 2023 season, I produced like 230 snakes, and that was too many. And I hit this wall, man. I hit this wall of anxiety, almost depression, right? Like I'm 40 now, but I'm in my late 30s. My little girl is 6 years old at the time, and I don't have time for anything. And man, it was a struggle. And so last year, I really cut back and I bred just like the unique things that I wanted to. And I took that time. I produced maybe 100 animals total: snakes, geckos, everything, right? And that was good. Also, that 230 snakes that I'm talking about was probably 190 snakes, 40 leopard geckos. I'm 230 animals in total. Uh, so I took this real reflection, and the next year I produced about 100 animals, which was a good number, and I didn't feel taxed by it. Uh, So that whole year, I was planning out my pairings for this year. So right now, I'm planning out my pairings for next year. So I knew I wanted to hit about 150 animals total. I was like, I know that that is a comfortable place. Uh, and man, just about everything that I wanted to go went. So I've got about 130 snake eggs and probably 15 gecko eggs, 20 gecko eggs in there right now. I was hoping on a couple of pairings going this year that didn't go, and I'm working on a couple pairings that slugged out that may potentially be double clutches. I try not to double clutch on ethics, but if you slug out your first time, you still have a chance of having a good clutch the second time, especially with colubrids. So yeah, in the incubator right now, I have for the Pitiophis genus, I have Jani that are hatching now from my original pair. That pair has hatched two aberrants this year already. So my pair will occasionally produce a semi-aberrant, kind of striped. We call them stippled. I haven't come up with a name for the line, but I'm going to have to, because it turns out the second generation of my line produces almost fully patternless snakes. And my buddy proved that out this year. So I have my original pair hatching now with two aberrants. And then I have the original aberrant that I produced. I have a clutch from her in there. And these are all North Mexican pine snakes, Pitiophis depii jani. I have Pitiophis vertebralis, which is the Cape Baja gopher snake. I've got leucistic Florida pine snakes. I've got black pine snakes. This year I gave the northern pine snakes off, which I will occasionally rotate a year out per species, especially with the big stuff. Couple clutches of corn snakes. I still love my corns. You're not gonna ever get those out of my grubby fingers. I have Okatee corn snakes from Tony D, all the way into Silent Hill, Hannibal line. The caramel Sunkiss, which is the honey combo, Tessera. I'll produce some shatters, which is cinder matched with Sunkiss and honey. There's another gene in there, and diffused, and mask. So I've got these super complex genetic monstrosities all the way down to just straight up no hat Okatee corn snakes. I hatched out a real pretty clutch of super salmon snow tesseras, which are just like one of my favorites. They're just like these neon pink snakes. I've got some true Mexican Nueve Leon bear dye that are going to be hatching real soon. Those are really neat animals. It's a Baird's rat snake. I've got a couple clutches of Lampropeltis leonis, the Nueve Leon variable king snake. And I've got one clutch just hatched. I've got 2 more clutches ready to go. A few localities of Alterna. A couple, I have some Alpine, Texas, Great Plains rat snake, some embryi. I've got some Nueces County reverse stripe Milomorum, which is the thorn scrub rat snake. That's a locality morph that I've been working with. I've got that paired into albino and chocolate for the first time ever. Nobody's ever done that, so that's going to be cool. So I'll have some albino chocolate anomalies, which will we don't know what they're going to come out like because they have the reverse stripe genetics. So we'll see. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting in there. I like huge diversities. I'll have compound amounts of a species, and I'll try to get a couple clutches per species each year. You always got to have that tax break species where you've got I've only got 2 leucistic pines, so if they don't do it, I ain't getting more. Them things are expensive, but yeah. So the incubator's fun. And then lots of geckos. I've got Heteronotia bioni, the Australian prickly gecko. It's a parthogenic species. I've been producing those things by the flood work. A couple species of cave gecko and lychees, because you gotta have lychees, right?
Awesome, nice. You don't work with any Cal Kings, or didn't produce any of this year, or?
So yes, I do, and no, I didn't.
Okay.
I just sold my pair of Pablos Verdes Cal Kings. I sold most of my Cal Kings. I do love them. They're a great species. You can't have everything, and you can't cultivate everything. And I'm a Pokemon gym trainer at best. So if I have a couple, I have to have a whole bunch of it. I still do have my. So I have some some Baja California kingsnakes, which used to be called Lampropeltis getula conjuncta, and mine are specifically Ciudad Insurgensis, Mexico locality, and those are from Gary Sipperly, who's a pretty old school herper that works with a lot of really neat locality stuff. I think I'm moving just enough to make my camera just keep freaking out. But those didn't go this year. She slugged out, so she is on the heavy food train, working on a double clutch. That is a species that I've had double clutch when she eats her own eggs, which is just like the coolest thing in the world. I've got Mexican hognose, so I have a wild caught pair of Boy Scout Road hognose snakes, which are really special. Those were from my buddy Austin Bohannon. He found the female on his wedding night. In fact, their son's name is Davis, and that's up in the Davis Mountains. And he's a wonderful friend. And so he gave me that pair of wild caughts, and I produced a couple last year, and I've got a couple eggs this year. So I'm pretty stoked on those. That's a neat species. They're really small hognose. They're feisty little whiny boys, but they're just neat. I hatched one out. They're about 3.5 inches when they hatch. So.
Oh wow! Did they take pinkies still right away, or did they require a little assisting?
They were not tough to get going at all in the world of having Alterna and Leonis and stuff. They were pretty straightforward. I use for hognose. A lot of people we can go on scenting and stuff like that later. I really think the trick is tuna juice, salmon juice, Campbell's chicken noodle soup, dog. That's what's up. You thaw out that pinky, you wash it with Dawn dish soap, you get it completely scentless, you get it warmed up a little bit, and you dip that sucker in Campbell's chicken noodle soup. I don't know why, but that's one of the tricks for them. I had I produced 4 last year. 2 of them I think just took frozen thawed off the rip, and then the other 2 took a little. One of the scents I don't remember. Usually after they've taken a single pinky, you've got to fight hog nose to stop eating. So that's pretty cool.
Just by curiosity, going back to the incubator here,
Okay.
do you only have one incubator or multiple, considering all the different species you have? And how do you incubate?
So that's a great question. I do have only one incubator. It is a sea serpent's, the smallest size, and that is a pretty small incubator. And I have found that is more than enough for a bunch of colubrid eggs. I incubate in a very specific way, and this is part of the Church of Lassiter. I'll talk about that as we go. But John Lassiter is a close local friend of mine. He's an old school herper, long time Lampropeltis breeder. He's written in Reptiles magazine and stuff, and I'm very lucky for him to just be a local homie that comes and drinks beers with me. But he set me up on the way that he incubates. So the way I do it, there's going to be 3 different trains of thought. I have animals that deal well with high humidity and do not have issues with drowning in the egg. I have animals that are usually my desert species that do have issues with drowning in the egg. And then I have eggs that I specifically don't want to get wet. So I'll handle those 3 different ways. I get we have HEB, I don't know, whatever your local grocer is. There's a black food prep box. And what I do, they seal extremely tight. For the most part, they will hold humidity. They're microwave safe. I don't think you would microwave snake eggs, but we'll see. I take them and I put 4 holes in the top, and I put tape over those holes. I fill it up with 40 to 50 grams of perlite, and then we'll talk about the first 2 ways I do it. So if I have something that is more likely to have issues with flooding in the egg, or one that does not have issues with flooding the egg, I will give it a specific amount of water. I generally use distilled water because our water in Corpus is like super specially terrible because Aaron Brockovich had to come here, which was super cool. But I will go 1-to-1, like a corn snake, right, or a California king snake. We'll go 1-to-1, and then if it's like something like a Mexican bear dye, or I also got a Christmas Mountain Splendida, which is the desert king snake, something like that. I'm going to go probably 80% water by weight. Now I have those 4 holes covered, and on day 45, so I have a little charts and records that I keep on everything, and I also label it on the lids because I'm a psychopath. At day 45, I pull off all the tape. Leave alone. I don't crack the tub or anything. They usually get the amount of ventilation they need. There is one more step I take for species that I don't want the eggs to get wet. So this is going to be Pitchophis vertebralis, Leonis, Cape Baja gophers, North Mexican pine snakes, variable kings, Alterna, stuff like that. Anything that's like real desert, kind of like very uniquely specific in its habitat, I guess. I have these, they sell them for fish tanks, and they come on big sheets, and they're to keep the mama fish from eating the baby fish, I guess. I don't know. Lets the baby fish go to one side of the aquarium. It's kind of like those light diffuser panels, but it's much smaller perforations. And so I'll trim those to fit inside. So now I'm going 80% water by weight, and I'm putting the eggs on top of that. And then I have these plastic golf tees that I just happen to have because I golf every once in a while. And the first time I tried it, now I've just bought a big ass bag of them. I never reuse anything. That's another thing. I don't reuse it. And everything is thrown away every year, which is probably really bad. But sorry, I recycle. And I'll put the golf tees in to hold everything in place. So sometimes you'll see pictures of eggs that I have, and they're held in place by these little golf tees to keep them from rolling around. But I can fit a shocking amount of these things, these little tubs inside of this incubator. And maybe I have a corn snake clutch of 12 eggs, so I'll put them all in the same tub. But
so 80-20, so 80% water, 20% perlite. Is that what you mean?
Oh no, 80% by 80% of the weight of the perlite in water. So if I have
Oh,
right, so if I do like 40 grams of perlite, I'll end up at, you know, I'm not going to do the quick math right now, but it'll be like
so it's very dry.
32, yeah, 32 grams of water.
Okay,
Um,
gotcha.
so I'm sorry, 40 grams of perlite to like 32 grams of water. If I'm doing corn snakes, it'd be 40 grams of perlite to 40 grams of water, right? And so I just measure it all out at the same time. I mix it all up, but the water ends up seeping to the bottom, and that's why I like perlite. It usually keeps the water off of the eggs. Um, so and that's kind of worked magically. I've had some of the shittiest looking eggs you've ever seen still hatch. Sometimes my black pines, I can only fit 2 eggs in that container, but you just do what you got to do. I'm not afraid to separate eggs. I don't mark my eggs. Years ago, I had a clutch of California kingsnakes that were maybe halfway through their incubation, and I was shuffling through trying to, you do have to play a little shuffling in there because I can fit 2 rows deep, 3 rows high for 3 rows. I'm not doing the quick math on that, and I can do that for 2 different levels. So it's quite a few clutches fit in there. And so I I had a clutch of California king snake eggs. My daughter was playing with some baby corn snakes or something, and I was moving stuff around. And every once in a while, I'll go through and I'll reorganize it to make sure my next clutch is the next one on top. Because again, I like things to be very specifically where they are. And maybe I got in a hurry and put a clutch in there. And plus, you got to check on your eggs, right? If you have some disgusting egg, right, you kind of want it to. Maybe we pull that one out, right? Maybe we pull the juicy Lucy out of the out of the clutch of eggs. And my daughter freaked out because the snake bit her, and she threw her hands up like that, and she hit my cow king eggs, and brother, they went flying. And I was like, oh, dude, they bounced off the floor and stuff. I was like, yeah, those are gone. Every single one of them little boogers hatched. They were fine.
Did you ever see that episode? There was one episode that they talked about the egg, and they proved that you could roll an egg at any point of incubation, and that the embryo doesn't actually attach to it, because there's always been that thought that everybody puts the dot on top or the line. Don't get me wrong, I still do it knowing that it doesn't actually do anything, but I still do it because I'm like, I'm not going to risk it, even though I know that they've proven that it doesn't attach to it. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're completely right. I don't mark any of my eggs with the exception of like corn snake eggs. My daughter likes to draw on them because she's the next snake discovery. But I do mark my gecko eggs, and that's just like I've always done it, and I'm always worried because when a gecko hatches, they freak out and they spin all the eggs. And dude, you hatch a lychee out, and they're these dumbass dinosaurs that just tear apart everything in their little incubation tub. Now geckos I do differently. I do use those, like, it kind of looks like they're not from sim container, but they look like the sim containers with the little egg holes. I do the same thing. It's perlite. I do 1-to-1 water to weight for the perlite, and then I put the eggs in there. And what I've started doing with certain species of geckos, you also want to have like a dry incubation, and I will what you call it? Oh, I just had like 1 second. Sorry, I don't want my computer to freak out. We're still good. Can y'all still hear me? Are we good? My computer had a pop up. All right. So yeah, I like for my heteronotia bioni, they're the Australian prickly geckos. They want to have a dry incubation. You don't want to get water on the eggs. They're a hard shell gecko egg. Back in my Phelsuma days, anything that has a hard shell, you can kind of already anticipate. Viper gecko, stuff like that. You can kind of already anticipate. You don't want to get any water on those eggs. I assume, and I'm not a scientist. Please, anybody that's listening to this, I am not a scientist. But I believe that it's because the eggs are not permeable. They don't have that kind of membrane that allows for the fluctuation of water in and out. They're more of a sealed container. So what I do is I take that hatch-right stuff and I put it on top of the little sim container thing. And that way I'll put the eggs in there. And if it gets wet, I'll know. And it's also like the way I do my lychees, if we're just talking full-on incubation, I actually take those bento boxes and I have the perlite, and I don't put much water in it. Usually I don't have to, but I have one area completely, maybe not completely, halfway full with water. And then I have another area with a bunch of crumpled up paper towels. And with lychee eggs, they're okay to get wet, but you don't want them to stay wet for a long time because their incubation could be like 130 days or longer. And I incubate those at a room temperature. So what I'll do is any of that condensation that you get at the top of the box will get wicked by the paper towels. So every once in a while, I'll replace the paper towels and refill my water to make sure that it's about the same level, and I have a little mark drawn on it. So now I don't have to worry about getting that kind of like rain chamber effect you'll get. And with those, I do have to open them up occasionally. Those I incubate at room temperature. So those are just in my snake room or reptile room or whatever.
You've never tried to just slightly tilt your containers? Because I get a lot of condensation in my containers and just everything's on a slight angle. I actually put the entire incubator slightly off so that every single container always drips to the back. But all the tops, and I don't know if you know this, but usually, even if you have full humidity in your container, it's only the front of your incubator that tends to have water on it. And in my case, it's because it's surrounded by styrofoam. Mine's an actual... I don't know, I'll show it later, but an actual Coke cooler, but the front is a glass, right? Yeah. The glass is not insulated. So because of that, the glass is colder. The front of the tub is colder. And I always only get condensation on the top front and not on the back sides. But anyway, it's just a thought. But if you simply tilt everything, I've never had the need to use paper towel. I mean, I could see how it would work, though.
You solved that problem a lot better than I did. I have probably always found the hardest way to solve every problem. I was an engineer my whole life, so it's like I'm like, oh, what can we do to do this? But you're right, that now I'm going to set up a container and do that and just tilt it a little bit and be like, oh, Kris, this was so much easier. That's a good point. Now I'm just all right, guys. Podcast is over. Y'all have a good one. I'm gonna go.
Well, thanks for coming on.
My incubator does have a tilt to the back, so all of my eggs that are in here are all at that direction, so that does happen naturally. Man, I kind of good times. Yeah, so I'm gonna try that now. But yeah, no, that's that just different incubation methods. There's been a couple other species, some of the Goniorosaurus. So all my cave geckos for years, which is a wonderful species, and if y'all are talking about kind of something that was lost to the hobby and has come back and was lost, it's come back. They're starting to hit their popularity stride again. It's a sweet lizard to keep. I've incubated those things at room temperature. I keep my incubator set at 81 degrees. I have a herp set. You can see, I don't know, one of the. You can see the green light, whichever one's the green light thermostat, and then I have gobies in there. I have gobies in different areas in my room. I keep the app going so that I can I want to know what's going on. If I have any spikes, any irregularities. But the Goniorosaurus for years, I was told, you got to incubate them like 70 to 75 degrees. If they get too hot, they won't hatch. Man, I've been incubating them things this year at 81 degrees in there, just like I would a leopard gecko if I'm incubated for female. And dude, they hatch out big and healthy and ready to rip and roar in about 62 days. So I think, I don't know, we'll probably get more into that. The way people do things is so uniquely themselves due to their where they are, right? Their geography. I'm at sea level. I'm at 80% humidity all the time outside. My house struggles to get below 60% humidity. There are species I cannot keep. Me and Michael have talked about it before. I can't do subox. I have absolutely murdered Bogertrophus rosale, the Baja rat snake, multiples of them. There's just certain species I don't do. I've had knobtails before. They didn't do well. So everybody has to experiment with what they have, because my setup is not going to be the same as your setup. And that may be even unique just to my house, right? John may do things a little differently in his house compared to my house, even though he's a couple miles away. So I think people need to be cognizant of that. And I don't think people talk about that enough. We go back to these old school Reptiles magazine articles that say, hey, this is exactly how you need to do it, right? You need to always incubate this way, or else it's not going to work. Well, that may just not be the case for me. I straight up may not be able to incubate some species here because I have too high of a humidity. So obviously we're using sealed containers and we're trying to combat some of that, but yeah, so that's so as far as I guess incubation stuff, that's how we go on that.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. The other big thing I've noticed is where you incubate. If you incubate in a cold room or a warm room, incubating in a reptile room is actually harder than incubating in a just somewhere else in your house where the room isn't that warm. I found that it's always easier to keep a stable incubator in a colder room. Just
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah. Uh, One more thing about incubating I want to talk to you about. So your incubator is about, I don't know, 1/3, maybe even 1/4 of the size of mine.
Yeah.
I only incubate about 8 or 9 clutches in my gigantic incubator. But obviously, my tubs are much bigger, and I've always found that a large surface of water, sorry, the water,
Mm-hmm.
air inside. So I usually take like big totes for 7 or 8 eggs. They are python eggs, but
Yeah.
still, like I have a very large amount of space. Judging by the amount of clutches you're putting in your incubator, are we talking about small totes? And is there a lot of airspace in there? Or is that why you're opening them often?
That's so that is yes. So they are very small totes. They're I don't remember the ounces on them. They're about 9 inches by 6 inches and about 2.5 inches tall. And part of the reason I have the holes in there and I open them up on a specific day, and I don't stack them on top of each other. After I've opened holes, I knock them off a little bit, and I have all the holes specifically in spaces so that they vent out. Um, I want to get as much airflow as possible into those eggs after I've opened them. I love that sealed system, and it has worked extremely well for every species. Uh, but you're right. The second it's time for those eggs to start breeding, what will also happen if you don't give the eggs room to breathe, because this does have computer fans in it and it vents air in and out. If you don't give them space to uh, breathe, they'll start warming up, and you can actually take govies and put them in different areas of the incubator, and you'll actually get 1 to 2 degree temperature swings on the eggs that are still sealed that have not started venting. I've noticed that within about 30 days before something hatches, maybe 20 days before something hatches, the eggs actually go up about a degree minimum. So by giving them that airflow, I want as much airflow as possible within the space I have. And it's probably a future thought of mine to get a bigger incubator if I'm going to do more clutches. Uh, but where I sit now, I'm on a pretty high success level as far as good eggs to hatching. I'm usually pretty close to 100%. But it does take more care on my side. I have to be looking at the eggs. I have to make sure that they're getting the ventilation at the right time. I got to make sure that I'm not getting big temp swings in the incubator. If I ever do pythons, which is I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I will probably have to have a dedicated incubation setup just for them. Also, they want different temps. If I don't, yeah, they want to be a little warmer. Um, but but yeah, so no, ventilation is key. Ventilation is key for so many things. So many species of reptiles. For reptiles in general, dude, they just need ventilation. They have it in the wild, right? So they're not living in these sealed boxes. I've had people message me and be like, oh, I've got cave geckos. I'm keeping them just the way you said, but I'm starting to get mold in my substrate. I'm like, brother, you need to vent them bad boys. Pituophis, Michael's got some Pituophis. They make some pretty special poo poo. If that poop
Oh yeah,
molds,
definitely.
yeah, if that poop molds in a day, right? Because you're not always going to catch it. Because this is what happens with big pine snakes. You feed them, and one of them poops. So you know it's time to clean. So you go clean, and you know that animal pooped because everybody in your house knows that they pooped. So you go clean all your snakes, and then the second you're done, you walk out of your snake room, and another one poops. And so you may not be cleaning it that day. You might not find out about it till the next day. And I've heard of people having mold issues on those within a day, and I'm like, no, you got to work on your ventilation. You need to up the airflow. So just something.
Yeah, I haven't had an issue with that. But I think I went overboard on some of my species, like the subox, with ventilation. Because in Dusty's book, and even listening to Clint Bartley, they just talk about, well, just turn the tub or the cage into Swiss cheese. So I have even the 4-footers that I'm keeping. So I'm keeping my adult subox in 4-foot by 2-foot by 1-foots. And I just, they have some slots in the back for ventilation, but I just did it exactly what I do to my tubs to the cage. Yeah. And so far I haven't had an issue, and I just heat them with a small heat panel. And it gets enough airflow, also gets a better temperature gradient. I keep a fan in the room. And so far I haven't lost a suboc due to a respiratory issue or anything. And I am kind of at sea level. Like I'm 10 minutes from the ocean technically. Um, but the humidity isn't, I would say, as bad here. Like obviously,
Yeah.
like we get some hot, humid, muggy days, but there's also a lot of days where, even in winter, where it's 30-40% humidity. So yeah,
Yeah.
and then yeah, the pine snakes, I just ventilate that. Like honestly, like in within a day, they probably the poops probably dry out a bit. Honestly,
Yeah.
they don't. So yeah,
That's it's something I kind of push towards a lot of people that are getting into colubrids early on. I assume that it's the same thing with most species. You may have humidity differentials that you want to find on certain species. It would be very difficult for somebody in Arizona. I'm thinking to keep Chinese cave geckos, right? This is a high humidity species that wants low temps. They want to be about 75. Some people keep them colder than that and have great success. I've had mine get very cold and be perfectly fine. Um, but how do you create that humidity while maintaining ventilation? I have ventilation holes on all my Goniosaurus species. In fact, on my babies, I have actual cutouts in the tubs with screens. Uh, I just don't want to see any of that molding. Now, for me, it's real easy to keep the humidity up. Maybe I spray them once every 5 days, right? If I spray a gecko daily, it's gonna it's gonna mold, regardless of what ventilation I have. It's just too wet here. Um, we always joke that the concrete cries here because we'll have so much condensation in the mornings as the sun starts coming up that the sidewalks will be slick sometimes. Uh, so yeah, it's just unique circumstances for every keeper. I really hope this new generation keeper. We've got some really smart special people. Michael, somebody like you, Dominic. I don't know how long you've been doing this, but I'm assuming you've got a little more tenure than Michael.
I'm old as you.
There, so you've probably been doing this a while, but we have these younger guys like Michael coming in that are really pushing the boundaries and experimenting with their own setups and being cognizant enough to reflect uh, those challenges they have. That's something that was so funny about growing up in herpeticulture and seeing so much of it is that we never talked about the when we made the mistakes. What did we do? We never talked about the hardships that we had with species. Everybody was always just like, oh no, you can't breed that species. That's you can't do green tree pythons, right? Like you just can't. And it's like, well, no, maybe you can't, but what did you actually try, right? What was your? Did you use the scientific method? Did you actually come up with any of your own ideas, or did you just take what the last person did after you had failed? Did you try it again? Did you reflect on those inconsistencies that you might have had? Did you actually pay attention to temperatures? Did you try to record any data? And I'm lucky enough where I'm at now with a lot of the species I work with. I'm dialed in, but I'm constantly I have an ebb and flow of species in my collection. I like to try different things. Um, it's probably to a fault even. I like to get a species, raise a group from babies. I like to start with hatchlings. I try to start with hatchlings on everything I have. I believe that also creates a circumstance where they're going to do better in your environment. Uh, Maybe if it's a species you've worked with before, and that doesn't mean a kid can't go buy an adult corn snake and have it live for another 20 years, right? Like that can happen, or any species, right? Uh, but I like to figure a species out, dial it in, get it to breed. I used to think that breeding was the litmus test for a species, and maybe that's not true anymore. We used to always say, well, if you got good eggs, you did everything right to that point. I don't know if I love that logic anymore. I do think it's a good parameter to set. But what did you do the next year? Did you create consistency? Did you breed them the next year? Did you breed them for 3 years? Did you get the babies to eat, or did you just wholesale that clutch? Did you create an identity within that species where you know that you can give somebody good advice? And like I've read Othriophis and a few of the other Chinese beauty snakes. A couple, some of those, and I've done that with many gecko species, Chahua, gargoyle geckos. I used to have a huge gargoyle gecko collection. Just anything. I love to get it dialed in, and then like I said, to a fault, sometimes I'm like, all right, well, I did this for 8 years. I did this for 9 years. Um, all right, I'm going to sell my adults or give them to somebody else. I want to try something else because we're all limited by time and space, right? Uh, we all like to think that we're superheroes and we can take it all on. But at what point do we stop and say, no, no, we can't? You really have to figure that out for yourself, and some people can. I've had numbers close to 200 before between geckos and snakes, and that was too much for me. I've dialed that back to a lesser number, well, a much lesser number, but we have to be honest, and you have to be credible to yourself. Make sure you're giving the correct amount of care. And sometimes I go in my collection that I have animals that I've been working with in my collection for 12, 14 years. I wish I had a few older animals. I do have animals that are older than that, but I I'd like to think that everything is perfect, but I still go into my room and I'm like, no, I need to do this better. I need to change this. I think I could handle this parameter better. Man, I mean, I'd like these snakes to be able to get a little bit more sunlight. I open windows in my room. I have a big window in my room. I like to have that natural, actual sun coming into the room, into the enclosures. So setting up my room so that that's actually possible. Because I'll dial this back, and I don't know if y'all were going to ask this, but I am a traditional, and again, to a fault possibly, I keep in tubs, right? Most of my snakes are all in tubs. I have some beautiful black box enclosures, tubs. Huge shout out to them. I have some sea serpents tubs, and I have some. Now I've got a large ARS rack. Um, you know, and it's what are we? How can we make that the best possible for our snakes as well? Giving them variability within those tubs, giving them variability within an enclosure is the same thing. How are we providing them with lighting? Snakes, we think they're all nocturnal, but some of these animals are crepuscular. I've seen some very diurnal activities from some of my Pitchiophis. I have a little Damnophis, a checkered garter snake that I found on my back patio about a year ago. That was a little tiny guy, and dude, he was gonna die. He was skinny. We had a bad drought last year. Last year we didn't get any rain, and I brought him in, and he was hungry. So now I've got a actually pretty cool display enclosure with a checkered garter from my backyard, and he's cool, man. So I don't know. I kind of went on a little bit of a rant there. I do that, but yeah.
No worries. So many things that I wanted to say, but I keep forgetting everything.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, interrupt me.
No worries. No worries. It's hard, man. When you talk, it's interesting just to let you go. It's interesting to listen. I want to go through on a couple of things. Number one, the tubs. I used to use tubs too. I just like looking at my animals. If you look behind me and you look at all the little tiny cages, to me, those are tubs. They're a tub with a glass front so that I can see into them. In the end, they're the same size as the tub, and I put a small snake in it. I just can see it. So to me, it's all the same thing. I wanted to go back on your raising babies. I think raising babies is the only way to go. It's the easiest, best way. It gets your animals used to your room. I mean, for me, that works. So the one thing I wanted to go through with you is, geez, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, there you go, I swear. Yes, no. Okay, so one big question that I have is that you seem to be very colubrid focused, right? And yes, I heard absolutely. Some of the negative of the colubrid is obviously they defecate all the time. So why colubrids? Why did you end up just going in that wing? Like, I know why I'm into just pythons and not boas or not really colubrids. So in your case, why did you choose only that wing? Like, what is it that attracted to you?
That's a good question, and it's a loaded question. It's a good point. I started, 1998. I got a pair of day geckos, and that kind of led me down the gecko route. Leopard geckos. I got some crested geckos way back in the day. In fact, the first New Caledonian geckos that Carl Vargas of South Tex Gex ever produced were crested geckos that I gave him. Regardless, that's the thing. He's one of my mentors growing up. Carl Vargas is a longtime breeder. He breeds a lot of spiny tail iguanas, rhinoceros or rhino iguanas. I think that's right. I'm not the best with iguanas. A lot of tortoises. He's the one that has produced the world's first albino pectinata, Project Solstice. If anybody gets a chance, check that out. and he does all the coolest lychees in the world. He's got the granite line and all that. Anyways, back on that. He was my mentor, and I remember him telling me when I was a young little Kris. He always told me, "So Kris, someday you got to go to West Texas." I think he grew up or used to visit Sonora a lot, and he would go to West Texas. He said, "You've got to see the snakes in West Texas." I said, "Okay." And so I started doing a little bit of reading, and I had my Audubon Society little handbook, and I still got it. And I would always look, and I'd be like, "Man, gray-banded king snakes. What is that? Look at that! I can't believe that is real." And so I was, I was probably 20 when I moved out. My mom and dad were very, very wonderful when it came to supporting my hobby, but God help you if you brought a snake in that house. There was no snakes. No, not a single one. So the first thing you do when you move out? I moved out. I got my apartment, good old, nasty old apartment, and I got a snake. I got a gray-banded king snake. And there was something about the way that animal acted. At the time, I had just uncorked the world of possibilities, and I had a bunch of snakes in my room. I had Hog Island boas, which I had saved up and bought back then, and I wish I would have kept them. I had a jungle carpet python. I'm using air quotes because I don't know if that's actually what it was, because that would have been 2003, 2004. I don't know how much honesty there was in the world of keeping and breeding with Morelia. And then I had Amazon tree boas, stuff like that. And so it came out. We had a local law. It's not a law. It's an ordinance that is, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's obfuscated in its legality of boas and pythons. I've had many different answers as to if they're legal or not. And at the time, I was just like, okay, well, I just want to check out these colubrids. And it was really king snakes and rat snakes. I loved the variability of colors. I loved the capability of taking something that has a phenotype and breeding it to something with a different phenotype and making either a multitude of phenotypes. It's even Alterna. You can have Alterna that are locality matched, and I would implore people that are working with Alterna to try to keep them locality matched. There's nothing wrong with not doing them locality, but being honest about what you're producing, well, that's a whole other thing. And God, they were just so beautiful. I loved the way they felt. They have an awareness about them. And maybe some people, they're spazzy and they're fast and they don't want you to hold them. Yeah, you're right, but spend a little bit more time, go a little bit slower, learn how to handle that animal. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. Boas still don't really do it for me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with boas. I think they're wonderful. But, I had these Hog Island boas, and they had this very delicate, strong, that's kind of opposing words, but they're delicate in their movements, but strong in their actions, maybe. They're very aware of their surroundings, but also whenever they make a decision, it was very uniquely direct. Until I started keeping and breeding rosy boas, and that's a whole different animal. But yeah, and that kind of, and then I kind of started noticing that the forefathers of the reptile hobby always talked about these gems of species. Gray-banded king snakes, variable king snakes, Mex-Mex, your algamas, right? Like your Zonata complex stuff. You got to get subocs in your hands, and until you see how a suboc acts, and how it responds, how it feeds, and maybe there was a little
what
bit
it does when you walk in the room.
Yeah, when they come out, garter snakes. Now that I've never really kept garter snakes. Now that I have one, like I come in my room and I'm doing stuff. I paint a lot. I have another hobby in which I do a lot of painting, and I'll sit there and I'll paint. And dude, the snake will come out and like look at me, and it'll just kind of be like, "Hey, yo, we eating? What's up, Doug? We doing some fresh water? What you got, homie?" And he's always kind of perusing and looking out. And half the time he's just in one of his little hides in his enclosure.
My subocs do that too.
Yeah.
Same with my big female Kentucky. She comes out like she'll be just in her hide, and then you're in the room for 5 minutes, and 3 subocs are out at the front of their cage, and the Kentucky female's out at the front, and they're looking at what you're doing. They're like, "Are you gonna feed me? Or are you? What's happening here?"
I like to think I like to dumb it down and think a lot of this is food derivative, right? Like or they're just hungry, right? But I also like to fantasize and anthropomorphize things. And man, maybe the snake is just interested in what I'm doing today, and that's a silly thing to think, and it's not the case, but it's it's there, and I don't want to sit here and say that other species aren't like that. I'm sure there's a lot of species throughout the gamut, but it's just kind of what I fell in love with. Once I finally went out and wait, hold on, back on your subox. You have those yellow rose pass pair that came from Justin, right?
Yeah, I got your pair.
That was my pair.
And
Yeah,
then,
those are badass snakes. Yeah.
and then I did get another pair from Nemo.
Oh, yeah.
I lost the male out of brumation, but the female gave me the 4 good eggs, and
Yeah.
your girl, she only gave me 2 good eggs this year. But hopefully they still go the distance. They're both doing great.
One of those was produced by Dusty Rhodes. I have.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have to get on my laptop to look at my lineage. I usually keep lineage information. Anyways.
So one of them was.
They're not related.
One of them was. But they're both Wild Rose Pass, though, right?
Yes. Yeah. They're both Wild Rose Pass.
Because I thought it was Trumbauer and Jerry Salmon who collected the only pair, but I could be wrong.
I'm pretty sure one of those came from Jerry Salmon, but I think Dusty Rhodes produced one of them. Maybe, and that's why. No, now those aren't F1s. I think those are like F2s or F3s. They're a little bit.
Oh yeah. I would assume so. Yeah,
but
it's in his the Subox story is in his Craig's first book, I believe.
Yeah.
It doesn't specifically say Wild Rose Pass.
Yeah.
But one of the times I asked him, he was like, "Oh yeah, no, it's in the book," and I was like. Huh? And it's like I had just forgotten because I've reread all the other chapters, and it was the last chapter that I forgot to reread 4 times instead of only 2 times.
And this is going to bring up a good point. Another reason why I fell in love with the colubrids, I got to go stand on that ground. I sent Michael some pictures of Wild Rose Pass. I got to go walk Boy Scout Road. I got to drive down Black Gap. Right. I got to put my feet on. I found an Alterna in Olympia Canyon. Right. I got to find the bear dye up on going up towards a observatory. I went and held the subox on Boy Scout Road, or excuse me, on Black Gap. I found a couple on Black Gap, and it's a special thing. And there's 2 different ways to look at it. One, it's maybe a little boring. These are just the things that I could go to my backyard and potentially find. If we're lucky, it's not that easy. It takes a lot of work. But then it's also like this exaggeration of my love for it, right? I got to go do that. Now I have a little slice of that here at home. It's neat. I think I've gone on a long-winded answer for a question that I don't know if there's a good answer to. I still love geckos. I still keep and breed multiple species. We still have leopard geckos, right? Like me and my kids still like leopard geckos and African fat tails. And I think, and corn snakes, right? Like I still produce corn snakes. There's a love that I have for the simplicity, and then there's a love that I have for the complex. I like something that gives me a challenge. I like something that makes me really push my limits as to what I think I can do and maintain as a keeper. But at the same time, I love the comfort. It's almost like going and sitting down with a friend you haven't seen in 10 years, right? And you just start off the conversation where you just had it. And maybe that's corn snakes or leopard geckos for me. It just exists. It's natural. It feels like that's where you're supposed to be. I'll still get the damn things out and hold them and play with them. And I have these beautiful buckskin okatees from Tony D. And they're the last corn snake I show you when you come to my house, and everybody sees them and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. What's that morph?" I'm like, "It's not. It's just, this is how they come." They're like, "Wow, people need to have more of those." And I'm like, "I know." It's a cool thing. But yeah, colubrids, man, they're fascinating. And also it's a smaller animal, and they do well. Colubrids also have this very unique capability amongst all the other species that I've really worked with and seen to just deal with anything. They got too hot, they're fine. They got too cold, whatever. We put them in the refrigerator down to 45, 50 degrees to get them to breed. I didn't feed them for 2 weeks. It's probably okay. I'm going to feed them twice this week. Sure, they could do that too. They're usually, for the most part, pretty simple. You can make them complex. but for the most part, they're pretty straightforward. But yeah, there's just man, and I just rifle through them tubs, just keep pulling them out. It's like, oh man, check this one out, check this one out, check this one out, check this one out. Yeah, that's probably why.
Awesome.
It's a good answer.
I was gonna, yeah, that's a very good answer. So I liked where you were going with the herping West Texas.
Yeah.
So obviously, Carl Vargas kind of originally got that thought in your head, but
Yeah.
what else? Was there any other factors that really got you out to West Texas? Was it John Lasseter in that, or
Yeah, Carl definitely put the idea in my head, and I went out there a couple times. I was in Boy Scouts growing up until I was 18. I made it to Eagle Scout. That was a very special thing in my life. I didn't play team sports. I had some pretty debilitating issues throughout high school. I had a lot of surgeries and stuff. It's a pretty serious medical condition, medical situations throughout high school that had me on crutches for a couple years. I skateboarded a lot. I broke a lot of bones. I did some stupid stuff. But Scouts was the most consistent thing I did. I went camping. I can't even sit here and say that I had a great Scoutmaster. They all kind of sucked. I wasn't even in a good troop. But it introduced me to this world where I could go out and be a part of nature, right? And with somebody like Carl as a mentor in the early days, and he's still a very close friend of mine, he said, you can go do this. Well, he hadn't done it a lot. And I went out and I had pretty bad, I had actually, let's call it zero success. and then once I started really rubbing shoulders with John, which was maybe 8 years ago, somewhere in that range, John was like, well, you go to West Texas, right? And I was like, I've read Craig's book. I've read, I forget the Alterna book from back in the day. I'd read Dusty Rhodes' book. I was like, I've always wanted to go. And he was all like, well, let's go. Let's go do that. And I was all like, yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, let's go do that. And once he took me out there, and it was the first time I went with him, and he was just like, yeah, we're gonna look for this parameter, or we're gonna look for exactly this situation. I thought that you just went to West Texas and then like kind of farted around in one area. No, you plan on driving 1,000 miles, right? You're going to be driving 2 hours to one spot, 4 hours to another spot, 3 hours to the next spot, and then the sun's coming up, and you're going to go sleep, and you're going to do all that again. You're going to be going to different areas and checking the parameters, and if there's snakes moving, usually there's going to be a bunch of snakes moving. I say a bunch. Like a bunch of snakes in West Texas is like 4 snakes, 6 snakes on a night. And if it's good, you stay in an area, right? But once he was like, I'm going to kind of give you the tour, and it's crazy. You go from Sanderson to Marathon, Alpine, north to Olympia Canyon, south down to Black Gap, the River Road, all these areas, and they are hours away from each other. But that's kind of what you got to do, and you want to follow the rain. And there's a bunch of different parameters, and I'm not like I don't get to go out and hurt very much. My work is pretty demanding. And my little girl, she's only 8 now, so I don't have as much time as I would like to do it. But yeah, John really just showed me it. He was like, Kris, you got to go do this. And I found my first Alterna with him. We had gone to Boy Scout Road, this one of my first nights. And I was like, man, I really want to find an Alterna. He's like, well, let's go look at Boy Scout. And man, we found a beautiful blacktail rattler. And he was like, well, man, we haven't really seen much else, and we're leaving, and we saw a cool Emery, a Great Plains rat snake. And I was like, man, this is cool. He's like, well, hey, this is pretty good. Let's head a little bit south because Boy Scout Road is north past Olympia Canyon. It's kind of in the same Olympia Canyon area. It's all Jeff Davis County, I think is right. It's just north of Fort Davis. And oh man, I might say something wrong here. I'm not always the best with the words. And so we go to this cut. He showed me a lot of the stuff during the day. We went to Wild Rose Pass, and then we went to certain cuts on Olympia Canyon. And nobody's ever found an Alterna on this one cut, right? He was like, this is just the perfect cut, right, Kris? And I was like, yeah, it's a cut, right? Like, it's perfect. And the cuts are these areas of mountain that they actually just blasted out with dynamite back in the day to make the roads because, TxDOT is historically just gangster as can be. So we don't have a bunch of switchbacks and stuff. We have these mostly straight roads that just blast through the mountains. So we go to that cut, and I get out of the car, and I'm bumbling with my shitty flashlight. And I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna do that. And, John goes ahead of me; he's already walking, and I click my flashlight on, and it is pointing at an Alterna. And I just go, oh God, there it is. And John's like, what? And so I herped for Alterna for like 30 seconds, the first Alterna I ever found. And that's the only one I've ever found. And she was beautiful. Um, it's sitting, so we jokingly call that Lassiter cut, and the rock she was sitting on is Painschab rock. So yeah, it was, but man, that I was already into Alterna, and I had already been keeping, and that was my second or third year producing them. Uh, Man, that sealed the deal. That's it's pretty cool. It was pretty awesome.
It's like completing that circle, right? Where you produce them, you keep them, and then you actually get to see it
Yeah, you get
in
to go find
person
one.
in the wild.
And God, they're cool.
Like how you hear in all these stories, right? So that's definitely super cool. How did you find that bear dye up in Olympia? What was that story?
So bear dye are kind of, they're a little more common than you think, but they are definitely a more mountainous species. Uh, we definitely did not road cruise it because that's illegal in Texas. But we were driving to an area and had stopped, and it just so happened to be in the middle of the road. So went out and grabbed it, and we were actually on our way up to the observatory road cuts and up to Madera Canyon. There's some really pretty areas up there. The Madera Canyon whole like wildlife area. There's a little camping area up there. It's just gorgeous. There's little creeks running everywhere, and we were going to go up there to look for lepidus. We did find a real pretty little lepidus, little tiny one, on the not on the cut side. On the there's a little brick wall on Observatory Cut, and the brick wall had stopped it. So we grabbed a hook and flipped it over and let it go on its way because it was trying to get past the little what is it? I don't know what it's like, a partition so that you don't go flying off the mountain, I guess. But yeah, we were not targeting bear dye. I did want to see one. I'm very happy that I did see one. But if you're looking for Alterna, bear dye are kind of going to be bycatch. It's going to be a lot of the species in that range. Oh man, I got to see the black-headed. I think, man, giant.
Oh, the Tantilla.
Tantilla, yeah. I got to see one of the giant Tantillas. Those are crazy snakes. They like eat centipedes. And so just seeing those neat little unique species. I've never seen a hook nose. I'd like to go find one of those. But a lot of them are just really in the same area. Now, if you want to go see subox, you're probably going to be doing a little bit different of actions. I don't think people find subox very often climb around on cuts. They're more of a cruised snake. I would say that emoryi are kind of in that same vein. But yeah, that's the bear dye was. I'd love to say, man, I really did this one specific, unique thing to find that bear dye, but I didn't. It just happened to be on the way to go look for Alterna and lepidus.
Nice. Was that the one that you sent to Justin or no?
Yeah. So I collected that one.
Yeah.
I took the infamous picture of. So there's a food truck in Alpine, Texas, and you could tag on, you could ride on it, right? And Justin had wrote bear dye are better than Alterna. He put a little bear dye greater than Alterna. And I think somebody went and doctored it up at some point. The next time I went, I don't even think it was on the truck still. But I took a picture of that bear dye that next morning next to that little writing that he had done. And I sent it in. And so the bear dye group on Facebook, that's still the picture. That's pretty cool. Man, and bear dye are extremely variable. If you really look at that animal, it's from that Olympia Canyon area. It's not a really pretty bear dye. Right, like it's pretty dark. It has a lot of those. What is the right way? It's very dingy. It's got a lot of melanin in its scales. Whereas if you go much more east to your 277 area, you get these really beautiful what did they used to call them, Michael? You might remember. Tim Gebhardt had a name for them: metallic rat snakes.
Oh yeah.
And you go more north from there, and they start to integrate with Texas rat snakes. And as you get more south, you really don't see them. You're not going to see a bear dye down on the river road very often. I know that they are inhabitants there, but they don't get found too often. I know people have found them on Black Gap. Black Gap, I believe, is where the one of the hypo lines was found. Hypo slash T-pos albino. I don't know the difference between what they call them. And I believe the anneries were found down in the Black Gap area. But then, you go further. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Black Gap seems like a weird melting pot where like that's where some of the Alterna morphs that are actually Alterna morphs and not hybrids are from, right?
Correct.
And then it's also where like a bunch of not the suboc morphs, but like for some reason people seem to find a lot of subocs on that road, even though they don't find much of anything else.
I don't think I've ever
is that right?
down that. Yeah, I've never driven down that road and not found a suboc. There's a lot of subocs, and that's where that really unique symbiosis happens with the ticks that grow on their tail. Or they don't grow on the tail; they leech onto their tail. So there's a species of tick that is unique to only subocs, and it slowly eats away their tails. So I have a picture of one of the ones I'm holding, and it has like all these little ticks on the tail. I forget the name of that species, but it's really weird. And yeah, so Black Gap is very, very unique. It's huge. Black Gap is massive. That's the other thing I don't think people understand. You could go back and forth on Black Gap, and it'll take you an hour and a half. Right? It's a big, big, big area. But if you go south and you're still talking about bear dye, you get down into Mexico where this species still exists, and dude, they don't look anything. As adults, they don't look anything like Texas bear dye. They're yellow, right? They're a yellow orange color with a gray head. But it's kind of funny. As babies, these things all look pretty damn similar. So yeah, that's kind of bear dye. Bear dye are a great species. I'll be hatching bear dye for the first time this year. Those eggs probably got 15, 10, 12 days left. And I'm excited because it's the Mexican variant. The pair that I have was from Jerry Salmon, and they're Fort Worth Zoo by San Antonio Zoo. He's got a Fort Worth specimen and a San Antonio specimen, and he paired those up. And I got the first time.
Nice. So
they're matched up. Yeah, it's just cool, like a neat little thing to have. They're not my favorite species. They're very obsolete, right?
Yeah,
go ahead.
They're like flighty a little bit, and they may musk on you. They're not necessarily bitey, but they're definitely a little spazzy.
Yeah.
Compared to like the subocs, they're kind of like they move, but they're just kind of chill. They might be a little hungry when you first go in there, but once you pick them up, they don't really care. They're not spazzing out and running around. I got when I got your subocs, I also got one of those Loma Altas that Justin produced that he needs to produce again.
Yeah, the Loma Alta. So that I said 277 earlier. That Loma Alta area is all that
Edwards
277.
Plateau. It's all
It's cool. Those are probably some of the prettiest in Texas. I think the Mexicans, like I said, they're very unique. They're smaller. The Mexicans are much smaller. I think mine are 3.5 foot, maybe. And they're 4 years old. I have repeatedly found success with colubrids at 4 years old. I don't. Everybody says 3 years. I've bred corn snakes at 3 years. I've bred California kingsnakes at 3 years. I haven't bred much of anything else at 3 years old. I'm not as determinate on size of the animal. Obviously, if a female's too small, right? She's a bad eater. You're not breeding her. But I've got some really small Alterna that are 5, 6, 7 years old that just didn't get any bigger, and they produce good eggs for me. You're not going to get a clutch of 8 or 9. That's a big Alterna clutch. You might get a clutch of 4, but I think it's age. I think age has so much more to do with it. I want a mature animal. You should be able to judge the health of your animal by looking at it. Dominic, we were talking earlier about raising from babies. It's not the only way to do it, but I do think it's the best. You know that animal in and out, right? You know its characteristics, you know its body weight, you know what it's going to look like after it lays those eggs. A healthy female that lays eggs, sometimes they just look like crap, right? They just do. But you know how it's going to bounce back. You know its feeding responses when it's time to start getting that weight back on it.
Yeah, I hear you. Maybe changing a little bit here. You've been talking about Alterna again, and I got to say, out of all the colubrids, they're always been the one that I'm really interested in, and that I would seriously consider getting into, especially after seeing the 9 Mile locality. or I'm saying locality. I guess it is a locality. Just gorgeous. And would you mind if we kind of dived in a little bit more into Alterna? Maybe talk about like how do you breed them? How does
Sure.
what's your cycle? Brumation, and try to dumb it down for the non-colubrid people so that I
Yeah.
kind of understand, because I know what brumation is. I don't know what brumation is for you or how you
Yeah.
do it. Kind of like, I don't know if that's okay with you, Michael. I'd love to dive down that road for the
Oh,
Alterna
yeah.
because it's something that I
Maybe.
love. So we'll let you kind of take that one away and go into your breeding of Alterna from, do it the way you want to do it.
Sure. 5 or 6 years ago, I would have told you I'm not very tenured in this, and I would maybe had bred them once at that point, but I've produced them consistently for this will be my 6th year producing them. So I think I've got a little bit of weight. It's tough when you talk about Alterna because there's a lot of people that have been doing this for a long time, and all they do is Alterna, and they don't like you. They don't want to talk to you about anything. That's one thing. I'll start with that on Alterna. Uh, there's a term, I believe it's called nimbyism. And nimbyism is when you have a hobby or something that is selective and unique to itself, and you have a heavy amount of gatekeeping. I think this is the right term, and if I'm screwing this up, somebody that's smarter than me can yell at me later. But you have this huge amount of gatekeeping with Alterna, and that's where I think it's the best place to start talking about Alterna. You have people that will fight you tooth and nail, telling you that if you don't have wild cots or you don't have F1s or you don't have perfect locality, they didn't both fart on the same rock and they didn't come from the same, they're not next door neighbors to each other. You don't even have a locality pair, and I think a little bit of that holds some weight, right? We want to have unique localities because they have these almost like it's insular little localities, right? Every little area produces specific phenotypes. You talk about 9 miles. 9 miles is kind of one of the more unique ones. You get a very typical look from 9 mile. You get a very light gray, a very bright orange, and most of them are Alterna phase. You can get some Blair's phase there. 277, you get these beautiful Blair's phase with these heavy black borders on these deep orange saddles. So then you go to the Olympia Canyons. Olympia Canyons look very specific. Boy Scout roads look very specific. So I think that is kind of the neatest thing about Alterna is they are very unique, small localities. And I know people that have bred them 9 generations, line breeding one specific locality. And this is a story that goes back, and maybe it's a little bit of hearsay, with no deleterious effects in the genetics, and they still produce massive amounts of variability. You'll never have two Alterna that look the same in a clutch. Uh, so now that we've kind of set that out, there are some really cool morphs. There is anery, there is hypo, there is leucistic. The leucistics popped up in a collection, and I want to say that was Dr. Bechtel. And man, forgive me if I'm wrong on that. It was either Bechtel or Bobel, one of those two. And man, if John was here, he'd throw a beer at me. But yeah, so they're also variable in size. You're going to find that a lot of your Sanderson and Eastern range animals are a lot bigger. They can hit probably that 3.5, 4 foot. A lot of your Olympia Canyon, especially like your Christmas Mountains, I found they're a lot smaller. Your Boy Scout roads are a lot smaller. But let's set up an alternative. There's my number one thing I would tell anybody that's going to keep Alterna for the first time, and like you said, we'll do the Big Bird Cookie Monster version. Cooler is better. These snakes do not like it hot. When I found my snake, it was a particularly warm night, and it was 74 degrees. You do not find these things out on rocks when it's 78 degrees, 80 degrees. It's not going to happen. There is one caveat to that. Black Gap is 100 degrees at night, and I don't know why. Black Gap is just hot. It is its own little unique spot. I keep my Black Gaps the same way I keep all my other localities. I shoot for a 78-degree hot side. I shoot for a cool side about 74 to 75 degrees. My hot side during the summer will get up to 80 degrees because, brother, it's 104 outside, and I got my AC working. But it just ain't, my house ain't getting below 75 degrees. It's not happening. So cooler is a little better with them. Patience. Alterna require patience. They're very strong eaters. They're very calm snakes. They're not going to musk. They're usually not going to bite. But once an Alterna is eating, it's almost always going to eat. I only ever have males go off feed, and that's usually during the breeding season. And I usually only have females go off feed when they're gravid. So if you have a well-established baby, you're probably not going to run into any feeding issues. Those males are probably not going to go off feed unless they're smelling the pheromones from the females, right? Uh, so I use aspen as a bedding. I think that, and I think anybody that keeps Alterna would agree with me. You will want a deeper bedding. They are fossorial to some extent. These things live in cracks and crevices. Uh, so if I've got a 78 to 80 degree hot side and a 75 degree cool side, I need a bigger enclosure. My Alterna are in bigger tubs than like my corn snakes, right? I use all of mine are now in ARS 5040s, which is like 3 foot long. It's bigger than a V35S. It's bigger than a V28. So I'll talk about the Church of Lassiter. He told me when I first met him, he's like, look, you've got these montane Mexicana group animals, and you don't know exactly what they're doing because you're at sea level and your barometric pressures are not the same as their wild locations. So give them options. So what I try to do is have a humid hide in the back, a dry hide in the back, a humid hide in the front, dry hide in the front. It's not always possible. Sometimes I'm just doing dry hides on both sides and one humid hide in the back. I have to do that also because my humidity will spike so high I don't want any respiratory infections. So humidity is not too much of a concern for me, but depending on the humidity in your area, you're going to want to specifically have humid and dry hides. And I think by giving them those options, you really you set yourself up for success, right? I do believe that these are one of the animals that are just not going to die, right? Like they're you kind of got to kill them. And Michael, you have some Alterna. I'm going to guess that you probably have noticed the same thing.
Yeah, I just have right now. I only have the one female 9 mile north, but
Yeah, cool.
yeah, no, she's pretty hardy. Took Pinky within the first 2 days.
Yeah,
I'm just keeping her in a large jelly cup right now because I'm worried to put her in a 5-quart tub that she might get out of. But once she gets big enough, I'll upgrade her.
They are specifically.
She's doing great.
Yeah, they're specifically escape artists. They can really flatten themselves out. They got these neat toad heads, but they can really squish themselves down to just about damn near nothing. So yeah, you want to make sure that you've got a really escape-proof enclosure. I've kept Alterna for years. Keeping Alterna, I've done display enclosures for a lot of your smaller localities, something like a 20-gallon. Obviously, you can tell that I've been doing this a long time because I still use 20 gallons, stuff like that. But like a 2 foot by 18-inch by 18-inch enclosure would be awesome for a display animal. Again, a deep substrate. You're gonna have a hot side, a cool side. Giving them those options, and you're gonna know that animal especially if you're raising it up. You're gonna know where it likes to be, and you'll maybe be able to get rid of your cool side humid hide. That's I was able to because I just don't need it, right? Like my snakes are never in a cool side humid hide. They're always in the cool side hide or in the dry side hide or the hot side dry hide. But I still give them the option for the humid hide. One thing I like to do with hides, again, as a tub keeper, we have to be a little bit more efficient. I use biodegradable to-go containers. They're not styrofoam. They're like a brown paperish material, and I cut holes in the tops, usually just in the front, so that it can get all the way to the back. And I'll fill them up with different substrates, right? If it's a dry side, I may just fill it up with aspen. If it's a cool side, I'll use either eco earth or I've used the cocoa brick. I don't know. The mulchy things. I don't know. And that works great. Adding a little water to it every couple weeks. So boom, you set it up for success. What makes a Alterna a sexually mature animal? A lot of people are going to tell you 3 years. I would argue it's 4 years. I think at 4 years, these animals are going to be sexually mature. I could go get a Sanderson animal that's 3.5 foot. She looks like a monster. I had a wild caught Sanderson male. He was about 3.5 foot. I have Christmas Mountain Alterna that are maybe 2 foot, right? And they're 5-6 years old, maybe even closer to 7 years old now. But that being said, I haven't set up. I do try to mess with my Alterna the least. Of all my species, they're one of the ones that I really just don't mess with. They're very quiet. They're very secretive. You're not going to get this response where you open up the tub and they come flying out. You're not going to get this response where you put a mouse in and they come, just bouncing at it. This usually doesn't happen. Um, and that usually tells me that that's a secretive, seclusive animal. Uh, Breeding. So there's the two hard things about Alterna, and that's breeding and getting babies to go. Uh, there was a thought for a long time that depending on the locality, right? They have a huge range. They even have a bigger range into Mexico. We really only get one locality out of Mexico. That's the Saltillo animals. They're really neat looking. They're totally different than anything else. But they actually dip into New Mexico as well. Uh,
Do you know the story on the Saltillos, or is it like a hush hush story?
There's no story. They're just in the hobby, right?
Okay.
Yeah, they're here and they're great. They're beautiful animals. They're unique, and however they got here is not my business. There's thoughts floating around how they got here. It's the same way we got a lot of our Leonas, but nothing I would put my heart to. But you got Huecos that are over there in the El Paso area that are close to New Mexico. There are some New Mexico localities that have been found. Of course, you can't collect animals from New Mexico. But okay, so let's talk about breeding. Some people, there's really, and I think this is incorrect when it comes to colubrids. People are like, oh, I'm going to fatten my snakes up for brumation. I'm going to feed them real heavy for brumation. I think that if you have to do that, you miss something along the lines for the last year, right? If that female lays her eggs and without really just hammering her with food, you don't get her back up to size. You miss something the last year of its life, right? I really think that consistency in feeding. I don't think they need to eat every 7 days. I'm probably closer to 10 days on my females and 14 days on my males. I just don't think you need to fatten them up for brumation. And the reason for that is how cold you need to get them. They need to get cold. So on Halloween, I turn off all the heat on my, and this goes for my Leonas, all my Mexicana group animals, but specifically we're talking about Alterna. I'm turning off the heat, and usually they're getting one last prey item, and it may not be a very big prey item. You need to know that animal if it's at a good body weight or not, and you don't want an overweight female. Overweight females tend to lay bad clutches, get worse clutches, and you'll see in the Mexicana group you get a lot of these fatty deposits. They get hips. You see that in like these 10, 12, 14-year-old animals. It's kind of a byproduct of that animal having been bred every year, having been fed every year, eating way more than it would in the wild, right? There's no way they eat a ton of food. But anyways, going to brumation. Halloween, I'm shutting everything off. Thanksgiving, we use holidays because it's just easier. Thanksgiving, these animals are going down into the cold. So I brumate my snakes with John Lasseter. I've done it on my own in a wine cooler, but you want to get them down to about 45, 50 degrees. And you want it to be dark. I think the light cycle is extremely important. Obviously, cutting them off of food. They need access to water. The whole time, I make sure they have water. Now, I may not keep the water bowl full in there the whole time, but every couple of weeks, you want to check them out and give them a little bit of water. A lot of times, they will still drink. They're still moving at 45, 50 degrees, which is wild. A lot of species don't do that. A lot of your hognose and your Great Plains rats and stuff, we get them down that cold, and they kind of just stop, right? They just kind of like sit in the corner and don't move. My Pitiophis, a lot of them, I brumate at the same temps.
I'm just going to cut you off there. Are you going from room temp down to 45 in a day, like overnight, or is there a gradual?
So by that time, once I've shut off all my temps, I'm getting down to about 70. And then, so the way, if it's going into a cooler, usually, yes, it'll go from about high 60s into that kind of 50s. Is good. John ramps everything down every couple of days. So once you start that, Thanksgiving is your date to have everything at 45, 50 degrees. We're giving you about a week by lowering temperatures every day. If it's possible. It may not always be possible. I don't think when I first bred some of these animals that had to get real cold, I would shut off the heat, give them a month, make sure they've gotten all their poop out, make sure they're not defecating anymore, make sure they have clean water. And I was like, all right, well, they just go in the cool box now. I never had any problems. Now that I'm more mature into this, I'm like, that really sounds like a variable for failure,
It's a
right?
huge shock to the animal. I
Yeah,
can't believe they don't get sick from it. Like when you talk
yeah,
about
Yeah,
pythons, it's like a 2 month process of going down.
yeah.
The instant is just crazy. Shows
And
how
you know,
resilient they are.
but in the wild, they do sometimes like right when you think about nature though. Sometimes it does go from oh look it's 25 degrees today, and the next day boom it's down to 10 or
yeah.
9 degrees Celsius, right? So
So
like I
Tex,
know with some of my stuff, I'll generally take them out or like cool them down, give them like at proper temperature. I'll cut them off food, and then I will move. Then I'll cool them down a little bit in the room. Then I'll move them to like another room that's probably in like the like room temperature, so like mid to high 60s, and then I'll put them in the garage, which is anywhere from 55 to the 45. But then I have in the past either brought them out or just put them down in the brumation like without like I wouldn't go straight 75 down to that, but
yeah.
definitely like the high 60s or low 70s. Like they don't seem to really mind
You know
as
it's
long as the food's out of their system.
it's kind of funny though. The way it works in Texas is we don't. It doesn't get gradually cold here. We get a snap, and all of a sudden it drops 30 degrees, right? Like overnight. Actually, it could happen in minutes. It seems like it's probably hours, right? But I remember one Thanksgiving, we got a big cool front because that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for these big cool fronts to come in, and it was 84 degrees. We were all wearing shorts, and that night it was in the 50s, right? There's been days where it was in the 40s in the morning, and then we're back at 75, 80 degrees. Of course, talking Fahrenheit, I don't know how Celsius works because I'm a dumb American. But yeah, they can take this huge hit on temps, right? You'll be in Alpine, Texas, it'll be 68 degrees, beautiful day, and then all of a sudden the cool front blows in, it's snowing, right? Uh, that's Texas is weird. We're getting really kind of in that odd temperate zone north of the equator where we don't have any of these consistencies. It's just boom, it just happens, and then it kind of just stays cold for a while. And uh, one thing, so back on getting them cold, we try to keep them down as long as possible. We will brumate them all the way until late February, early March. Um, Longer is better with Alterna, with all your Mexicana group. I could pull my Cali Kings or Pitch Ophis out in January and they'd probably breed, right? It's no problem. We have to artificially simulate this. I have a good friend in Alpine, and it'll be end of February, and he's like, "Yeah, man, it was 32 degrees this morning. I'm keeping my snakes down until he's got to wait until the temps come up. He's a little more lucky in the sense of he naturally has it cold, whereas we here, I mean, I don't know, dude. I wear shorts on Christmas. We don't get much cold in Corpus, but yeah. So we have this huge, this big brumation for them, and it's. I think it's more pivotal for the males than it is the females. For those males to uh, produce good sperm.
Can I just cut you
When,
off for just a second?
yeah,
Just for
absolutely.
brumation, are you keeping it cold day and night so
Mm-hmm.
there's no change, there's no temperature?
Yep. No, no
Just to
change, no
clarify that?
temperature, no light.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And just by
Yep.
curiosity, why do you think that long brumation helps for the Alterna? Why,
I
you don't think a month and a half of that cold temperature would be enough?
no.
Uh,
And I think it's just their natural instinct because they go into the mountain, right? They use the small cracks and crevices, and the thoughts are they'll go in hundreds of yards into the mountain. And I believe that once they hit that kind of stagnant state, there's humidity in that area, but there's not going to be any prey. There might be, I guess. I don't know. I bet an Alterna would eat at 45 degrees. I bet it'd be okay too, which is kind of a funny thing about them. But they don't come out. You're not going to find an Alterna in the western range probably until June, July, June. June is probably the right answer there. And then the eastern range, maybe in May, they'll start coming out. Uh, they just don't come out very often. Um, and so we try to simulate it as best we can. So these long tenured brumations seem to be the trick. I've known people that have put them down for short periods of time and get infertile clutches, or the females don't even breed. They just absolutely will not want to. Uh, so once you pull them up, there's that. that kind of old school thought. Well, you got to hammer them with food, hammer them with food, hammer them with food. I found that's not the right answer. Alterna usually will not breed until they've shed. The female's first shed. The male doesn't really care. Usually, if the male is in shed, I've never had a male in shed breed, but I wait till my female shed. Um, but I kind of put them on small meals for the first couple weeks. So bringing them up, I'm more concerned than when I'm putting them down to cool them. So when I'm bringing them up in temperature, that is a slow stage, right? So let's say we're at 45, 55. We're going to try to get that up to about 65, right? And over a week, we'll go to 65. Then the 65 to 70 temperature increase is probably another week and a half. And then then at that point, I'm turning the heat back on, and they still have about a 72 because my room will still be cooler at that point, 72 to 74 cool spot. Hot spot, I'll have it set back at 78. Clean water, of course, and then what you call it, small meals. I think small meals every 7 days is the right answer. I do love to have a good fatty meal like rat pups for the females. Males sometimes just straight up won't eat. I've had males refuse food until after they've bred multiple times. But if you had a healthy animal going down in brumation, I've never had a female lose a drop of weight in brumation. I've never weighed them before and after, but they look the exact same. And Michael, I know that if you've breeding these species and you're getting yours cold, do you see any like big weight drops on anything when they get cold like that? It just doesn't happen.
Not really. Like
Yeah.
sometimes the subox and stuff will lose a little bit of weight, but most of my stuff seems to hold weight. Although like sometimes you can tell like you'll give something like 3 weeks to clear out and they still don't defecate until like 3-4 weeks in, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But like I still haven't lost anything from that. But yeah, it's yeah. I haven't had too many issues with dropping.
I had a Leonis this year shed in brumation. That was interesting. I had a male that shed in brumation. They're still active. They're not moving. They're not nearly as active as they are when they're warmed up during the summer stuff. But anyways, so I'm gonna warm them up, small meals, and then I'm just waiting for that female to have her first shed. And man, Alterna breed so fast, so fast. After that female shed, that male's all over her. They lock up for minutes and they're done. That's one thing that's blown my mind with colubrids over the last many years is every species breeds just so differently. And we lump a lot of these things into similar care styles and feeding patterns and brumation patterns. But your California kingsnakes might breed for 24, 26, 28 hours. They just stay locked up forever. Your pine snakes have this very violent breeding. They bite each other. The male bites the female and really locks her to the side of the tub, and they'll breed for a couple hours. And man, Alterna are minutes. They find each other. The male locks up. They have this beautiful. I really think it's kind of beautiful how they breed. They really wrap around each other. It creates some very unique patterns. When you get to see that with very unique, pretty animals. So yeah, I'll try to pair them. I'll pair them till they stop. So I'm going to pair them every 3 to 4 days, and I'm going to give them as many lockups until that female starts rejecting the male. Man, when that female rejects the male, he knows it. He does. He ain't gonna mess with her anymore. And usually at that point, I can start palpating. I don't know if that's the right word, but you can feel the eggs. You can tell they're gravid. With Alterna, you can really tell. They have a bigger egg than like a corn snake, even though they're a smaller snake. So usually I'll palpate them out. A good clutch is 5 to 7, right? That's a pretty damn good Alterna clutch. Go ahead.
I was going to say, any fear of cannibalism when you put them together, and are you repairing if you want to double clutch them?
I have never been worried about cannibalism with my Alterna until last year when I had a buddy have a female eat her male. I'm pretty pragmatic about staying on top of them. Once they've paired, they breed so fast. I'm pulling them apart. I'm not leaving them together. Some of my Pituophis and stuff, they're fine. Leave them in there. They'll be there for a couple days. Pull them apart to eat. In fact, I cohab some of my Pituophis year round. But Early answer for many years, I would tell you no. I had never heard of cannibalism in Alterna. Now I have, and I'm very scared because some of these localities, man, I've got some Paisano Pass, West Alpine. I'm never going to find those again, right? And I got a 1.2. Some of them are just really hard to get a hold of, especially if you have like F1s, and they are kind of unique. But yeah, so cannibalism is a kind of constant concern with king snakes. They're philophagous, I think is the right word. They will eat other snakes. And what was the second half of that question, Dominic? I'm sorry.
Second half was for double clutching. Are you repairing or are you not at all?
I with Alterna, I am not at all. Alterna are a species. I'm sure you could double clutch. I believe that the way to start a double clutch is with extremely heavy feeding after the female has laid, and then start pairing up again. I generally don't want to double clutch any of my Alterna. I don't want to double clutch much of anything unless it's like California king snakes.
And why? Is it just too many babies or too hard on the female?
Both. Alterna seem to get hit extremely hard when they lay eggs. The females always look like crap. They bounce back so fast, so fast. But it really takes a lot out of them. They, like I said, they have these bigger eggs, and I was shocked the first time I got Alterna eggs. I was like, wait, these things are huge. These are big eggs. They're not like Splendida. Splendida eggs are damn near the size of the snake. I don't know how that works. Or Pitchovis eggs where they're the size of your hand. But Alterna have big snakes relative to the size of the animal. So I try to not. That's my first half of that question would be I just don't want to double clutch them for the sake of the female. Also, I don't even know if the males would want to breed again. They might not have to. They could retain the sperm, and you just feed them super heavy like you can a corn snake, and just get a second clutch anyways. The other half is I really don't want to produce too many Alterna. I could probably, I could have a house full of Alterna and produce 20 clutches. Like I could do that, and I'd probably put a drill bit through my head once those babies start coming out because they're tough. I'm not gonna lie, babies can really suck, like really suck. They I used to say they're not too bad. Uh, they can really be bad.
So before we go into the babies, can I just ask you one
Yeah.
quick question about?
Sure.
So when you were talking about not double clutching, is there anything you can do to prevent the double clutch? Because I know some females are just so programmed they go anyway, right? So is
Yeah,
it just
absolutely.
feeding a lot less, or is there anything else you can do to prevent it? Or obviously you can overfeed it to make it go. I'm just curious, and then go right into babies if you'd like.
Yeah. So uh, I am pretty strict on. I really do believe that if your female lays eggs, regardless of what she looks like, if you have to just in your mind hammer them with food so they can get back into good shape, I think you're setting them up for failure that next year, right? I think you're creating the thought that what's the right term for it? I think it's more of your own mental game that you're getting into, thinking that man, I've really got to do everything I can to get this to the right size animal, or back to the right size, and they bounce back. By now, like even now, I've got maybe my last Alterna laid, my 277 laid a month ago, and she looked rough, dude. She looked like a tube of toothpaste. And if I went and grabbed that snake, you couldn't tell she laid eggs. And she's only eaten 4 meals, and they're small. I'll usually start them on a hopper or a rat pup, and then I'll the next feeding. Maybe at that point, I'm feeding every 7 days instead of every 10, because I do want to make sure I'm on it. I don't want her to miss a meal. Then by the third meal, I'm back on small mice. So that's the other thing about Alterna, and I probably should have said this earlier. I don't feed I don't care how big that Alterna is or how small that Alterna is. They all get small adult mice, right? And that seems to just be the right size prey. I don't think in the wild they're eating these big meals. Colubrids don't like big meals, anyways. And with the temps I'm keeping them at, I've noticed that a small adult mouse is just perfect. So yeah, it should be a slow progression. You should go. I like to give my female a couple days before I even feed her. Sometimes it's up to a week. Make sure she gets all that water back in her system. After that first week, you'll notice they've already started getting their structure back. And then within the next 2-3 feedings, they're usually damn near close to normal. By the end of the summer, my females look great, and I'm not pumping them full of food. By the time I'm in September, I'm feeding them every 10, 14 days. That last feeding in October, I might feed them once or twice. You just don't have to. You don't need to oversize these things. You don't need to. You're going to kill them. They're not going to live a long time. You're going to have these snakes that live for 8, 10 years, maybe 12 years. And I want my snakes to live 20, 25, 30 years. I want to set the record, right? I want to be the person with the Alterna that lived the longest. I went out of my way to cherry pick babies and raise them up and get special, unique lineages going and localities going. And I want them to live forever. I want to pass these things on to my grandkids. Babies.
Do you know what the longest? Do you know what the longest lived Alterna is, or does anybody know?
I don't know. I know John had a male Christmas Mountains that was over 20 years old that was still breeding. So they'll keep going. We set these life terms on these snakes, and we tell people, oh, it'll live for 15 years. Maybe. I think it's a lot longer than that. I think if you space out their feedings, you don't overdo it. I think it's the same thing with pythons. I'm real good friends with Billy Hunt, Uwabami Reptiles, and Dominic. I'm sure you know who he is. You might even know him. And I talked to him about pythons once. He was like, "Yeah, you could breed these things in a couple years, but that's not the right way to do it. You get way better clutches, way healthier animals, way longer lived animals when you space out their feedings. When they're an adult, when you're feeding them once a month, right? And again, they lay those eggs. And I believe with pythons, Dominic, you're gonna know the answer to this. Those females might not eat for a long time. What if you're doing maternal incubation, right? Like in the wild, they're not eating, right? Those snakes aren't going out and hunting and then going back to their eggs. They're staying on the eggs. And that could be what, 60, 70 days, I'm guessing, for gestation on an egg. I'm not sure.
Give or take.
Yeah. But, I like to think about what they're doing in the wild. This is also, I got to go back on this. These are subjective thoughts by somebody that does math for a living. Not somebody who has any educational background in biology.
I like your thought though. Like I want to go back to something you talked about. Like you talked earlier in the episode about how to measure how well your animals are doing, right? And I'm a big believer that yes, breeding is an aspect of it. And if you can breed your animals, it's doing everything. But I can also pump an animal, get it to adult size in 2-3 years, breed it 3-4 times, and it dies at 7 or 8, right? Yeah. And that's something that a lot of people do. And to me, that's not good care. That's not something. To me, another test to see how well you care for your animals is your animal living to those the longevity. So with a lot of reptiles, especially pythons, but it seems to be somewhat similar for what you're talking about, Alterna, is less feedings, longer feedings apart, long amount of times without feeding, like brumation and all that, because some people will not brumate their animals at all, right? Or some people's, for pythons, will not cool them off and stop feeding them. I don't feed my animals for 5 or 6 months of the year. Every single thing. My entire room stops feeding, even babies. And you know what? I truly believe that if you do that, your animal will live a lot longer. It's all part of their natural habitat, right? Which it seems to be the same thing. To me, if you do that, your animals will get to the age of 20, 30, even more. And pythons seem to live considerably longer than colubrids. Anyway, from what you're saying, you talk about not knowing much. I know nothing about colubrids, so this is completely out of my realm. But it's like a python that is kept on a very slow schedule and not overfed and just, doesn't feed during winter and all that. You hear of them 30, 40. You've heard of ball pythons into their 60s. So I don't know. And
they'll still breed, which is the crazy thing that people don't take into account. I've heard of people breeding ball pythons and carpet pythons at like 2 years old, right? I remember there used to be this video on YouTube, and Dominic, you might remember it. It was some Australian guys that were talking about power feeding. They didn't call it power feeding; they called it something else for carpet pythons. They're like, every 3 days we're going to give them this size prey, and then at this day we're going to give them this size prey. And man, it made its rounds, and everyone's like, "Oh, dude, I sat down with my daughter today. This would be a little side note, and we were talking about the value of animals. And me and her were having a little lunch, and we wrote down the math. She's really interested in math. She's got my brain, and her mom's brain too. But we sat down. And I was like, okay, so let's say I bought a pair of $500 snakes, and it takes me 4 years to breed them. How much does every food item cost? Let's say I'm feeding them once a week. That's just the easiest way to do math. But let's say it's 50 prey items a year, and they're $1 a piece. And that's 2 snakes. So I'm spending $100 a year on food. I'm doing that for 4 years. That's $400, right? This is easy math. I've almost paid the entire amount of what those snakes cost just in food. So I'm doubling the cost of the snakes. Assume that's food, housing, bedding. It costs exactly what the snakes cost to just maintain them for the 4 years before I breed them. But what do you value your own time? Now that you're trying to feed them on a slower schedule, my time is, we figured it out to 6 minutes a week for 2 animals. And that is that's 3 minutes a snake for maintenance, cleaning, per week. With its, water probably takes 30 seconds. Spot cleaning probably takes a minute and a half. We really broke it down. But some days you're going to have to do deep cleans. And let's say that deep clean takes 30 minutes, right? So we compiled it all out, and I said, okay, what's your time worth? Let's say the average person, America has a very low minimum wage, but we don't need to talk about that right now. Well, let's say we say we make $30 an hour, right? That's enough to be able to afford a house, probably, if you're extremely lucky and you live somewhere outside of California or New York. So if we're looking at $30 an hour, let's break that down to what our minute costs. And by the time these snakes were able to breed, we're in the thousands, right? So let's say I breed that snake for 10 years, so that snake's 14 years old. At no point in a normal clutch size did we ever swing positive based off of selling those animals for what we bought those snakes for, because your time consists of a value. So me shortening that.
I think that depends on the initial cost of the animals, because whether your animal is $50 or $20,000, the cost is identical. So when you start with an animal with a very high value, I think your numbers are skewed. But with lower end animals, no, you'll never see the positive net.
Yeah, and so because she really likes her hognose and her leopard geckos, and so what we did, and that's such a great point, and I'm glad you said that. We took the absolute cheapest animal that she has in her collection, and the most expensive animal she has in her collection, and we found the median, right? So a $250 colubrid is actually on the higher end side of colubrids, right? You might have some stuff in the $600 to $1,000 range. There's obviously way more expensive stuff, but your average colubrid, let's say it's a corn snake, $100, $120, right? So you can sway this back and forth. Now, and so she talked about, and the reason this whole conversation came up is not just to be a rant, but actually it's a derivative to your question. If I shorten that 4 years to 2 years, it doesn't change my end result, right? If it's a and at some point, right, this number sways based on the value of the animal, the cost of the animal, but you also have to, at that point, you got to stop and go, okay, well, let's look at the risk to the reward. So now this gets into this conversation of economics of making these risky decisions to buy $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 animals. And you say, oh, well, this makes so much more sense. I can make so much more money. Well, if that animal dies, then all of your profit becomes in net negative, right? Like all of your investment, your equity in this project. So I've never seen the value of pushing an animal to get it to breed faster. But if you create longevity, at some point you may start going back positive. I'm not in this for money. I could never be in this for money. I'm over here breeding rat snakes and stuff. I'm making Okatee corn snakes that are going to be $50. But that's my side of the hobby, and that story is different for every individual. But it's a good point to look at. If you're pushing everything you have to be the world's first, I understand that maybe that's the prerogative of that group of people. I'm not going to be. I will be the world's first for some things. I have gotten close to world's first animals. It will not change my daily life at all. It will not make me a famous person. I will not have 1 million views on YouTube. I will not go down in the history books as the person that made a reverse stripe albino emery eye, right? Like it's not going to matter. But in the end, I will have created a positive environment for my animals, for my family, for my friends, and I'll be able to do stuff like this. Also, you're going to burn yourself out. People don't think about that. When you're having to do something, you're having to create a complexity on a daily basis. to try to do something that you could also just be let down, right? What if that female becomes egg bound? What if that female produces slugs? Just what if she's infertile, right? What if she's just it just ain't it, right? What if you just did something wrong? What if she regurges, right? What if you got one of these desert? What if you got a suboc, right? And it regurges, and maybe you go back for that next feeding in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You're really careful, and you use your Nutribac, and you do all your stuff that you would normally do for a desert species after it regurges, and it does it again. This isn't crypto. This isn't anything. It's just that snake ain't gonna make it. You've got a couple weeks left, right? And people don't think about those complexities. They don't. They didn't put their heart first, and so yeah, kind of on that same what we're talking about. I want my animals to live forever. I have the collection I have now. Those animals may not stay with me forever, but I want them to live forever, right? Now, with a lot of my stuff, they will, right? They will always be with me. But anyways, I ramble. I go on rants. But babies. Okay, so now we've talked about incubation. We've talked about breeding. We've talked about care. We know what we're doing. Man, the first thing I would tell anybody that just hatched a clutch of Alterna is you are about to have a personal conflict with patience. Yeah. You need to be chill. I don't start trying to feed Alterna till 2-3 weeks after they've shed, because brother, let me tell you, them snakes will still be here next year. You can a baby Alterna that has not eaten, that is kept at a cooler temperature. I try to hit 76 to 78 for my babies. Will go into brumation and come out, and if it's been kept the right way and has water, will still be good to try feeding next year. And that's something that people don't realize. That's one of the reasons we try to push our brumation a little longer. I want snake. My Alterna aren't going to be hatching till end of August, right? Maybe September, and we're a couple months away from brumation. So what do you do when your Alterna hatch? One of the number one things I would say not to ever do, and this is me personally, I never tail a snake. I never force feed anything, ever. Well, that's not true. But with Alterna babies, I don't want their first meal to be force feeding, especially with mouse tails. There's such a small amount of nutrients in those mouse tails, and you need to be feeding them mouse tails every 3 to 5 days after that, right? Once they start getting that metabolism rolling, and just because you fed an Alterna mouse tails for 2 months does not mean that it's going to start eating. That is not how these snakes work. They're not programmed that way. If I produce 20 Alterna, every year I'm going to get one that's going to eat a frozen thawed mouse right off the rip. It's just going to happen, right? I'm going to have one or two. Some of them just eat, right, and they're good to go. And then you have, we call it the list, right? The list of things you're going to try, and I try to not mess with these animals too much. So when I set up my babies, I use those pencil tubs, and I fill them pretty high with aspen. I have a water bowl in the front. I don't give them too much water. They don't really drink that much. And then I take napkins. I like to use those brown paper napkins. I don't know. Again, biodegradable stuff. Everybody in the reptile hobby, get yourself a compost heap. If you got biodegradable stuff, you can go put it out there. You can turn it up. You can use that for your gardening. My periwinkles look dope this year, right? There's stuff you can do with that. But you use those brown biodegradable napkins, and I cover the aspen all the way up to the water bowl, maybe 2 inches back, so that the snake doesn't push into the water bowl, and then you get that awesome thing where everything's wet. So I start there. I usually try to always put the prey item in the same place, and I try to do like 5 to 7 days in between feeding trials. These snakes are terrified of you, man. They just don't want to be seen. They don't want to see the light. I try to feed right when my room starts getting dark. Our times may be different. About 8 o'clock, things start getting dark here. And so you start frozen thawed, and then you go boiled, and then you go brained, and then you go start with your scents. I have a lot of animals for scenting. I also use Reptilinks, I think, is the company that makes different scents. They have a toad, a lizard, a gecko. I've used those. And I can't sit here and say, oh, this clutch did better with this, or this clutch did better with that. Every single animal seems to be unique on what it wants to get started on. But I've never had an animal that ate scented 2, 3, 4 times and then didn't swap over to frozen thawed, just frozen thawed pinks. I have never had success this is me personally, and I haven't had hundreds of Alterna clutches. I've never had success with live pinks with Alterna. I don't know why. Every single one of them ends up eating a frozen thawed version of it. But I have spiny Texas spiny lizards from West Texas. I have Coleonyx brevis, which is the banded gecko from West Texas. I have brown ground skinks. I have the hemidactylus. I don't know, the little Mediterranean geckos that you find outside. I have those, and I have them all frozen. What I have found works best for me, some people blend them all together, and that works, and that's the way to do it. Some people just stick all the lizards in one blender and do it. I make tinctures, so I'll take the lizard and I'll put it in like either a boiling water or a very warm water, and I'll kind of muddle it a little bit. And this is gross, right? This is nasty. For the longest time, I was using brevis, and I was breeding them. And so what I would do is I would take their tails. I'd pop their tails off, and I would make tinctures out of their tails. And I use those little 1.5 ounce deli cups, and I make my little tinctures out of that. And what I found is that after you've muddled them a little bit and you freeze them, and you've thawed them out a couple of times, they start to excuse me. They start to dissolve into the water. It sounds disgusting, but you kind of get that, like, it becomes an opaque, milky kind of water. And I've been using that for scenting for years, and it lasts forever, right? So I'll get my pinks, I'll thaw them out, I'll wash them. We usually use Dawn Blue dish soap. You wash them really well, and then you rinse them until you get them no soap on them, right? You don't want them to smell like soap. Fun fact: sometimes they will eat the ones that smell like soap. Also, sometimes you just rub dirt on the pinky and they'll eat it. But yeah, usually I'll make a list of what each animal does decide to eat, and sometimes I've got some that just don't eat, and they're so stupid. And then you brumate them, and they come out and they take the first frozen thawed pinky you offer them.
How long did they last without feeding? Just by curiosity, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I've the only species that I've had that gives me the amount of trouble you're describing are pygmy pythons, and they can only go so long until you have to force feed them. And they seem as horrible as what you're describing, but I don't have the option of brumating. So I'm curious, how long would they last? Let's say they come back from brumation, they're still not eating.
You've probably got until that summer with a lot of them. Some babies just aren't going to make it anyway. Some of them don't make it to brumation. By the time brumation hits, I'm usually at 75, 80, 90%. Some years. I've had years where I'm at 100% feeding. I'd say there's probably, let's on average 15% that don't eat. Those 15% go into brumation. I'd say 95% make it out of brumation. There's always one that maybe doesn't. And then you've probably got a couple months after that. Some of them don't eat. Some of them don't eat. They just don't. Some of them want a live lizard from West Texas that you don't have. You just don't have it. I have heard success stories of people pumping them with turkey baby food. I've heard success stories of people tailing them for years. I've heard of people. I know a guy that pumped baby Alterna with turkey food. That's what he started them all on for almost their first year. And every week he was giving them baby food out with a syringe. That is possible. You may also be creating a situation where you're going to sell those snakes to somebody and they're going to breed them and their babies are going to suck too. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. I have heard with the Antarisa that you absolutely have to start force feeding them because they can't, their metabolism window was really short, right?
It's very short. That's why I was asking, because if I chose to not go down the force feeding route, within about 2 months, they're basically all dead.
I wonder.
So it's go.
Would they eat Heteronotia, the Australian prickly geckos? That those things come out and they're maybe the size of a dime, right?
There is a bunch of people breeding them in Canada. Like Northern Gecko breeds a bunch of them. You probably could get a hold of some at maybe wholesale, possibly.
There's a lot of some people do the day geckos because I think they're what's that word when they breed on their own there?
Parthogenic.
There you go. They're
morning
parthenogenesis, right? So I know there's a couple of different options and people do that. Now the big question is, in your case, for that 15% that doesn't eat, then let's say you've got, I don't know, after you get most of them going, are you eventually force feeding those, or to you, they if they don't make it, they don't make it? This way, you're not propagating
No,
that
yeah,
problem animal into the future. Is
it's
that
not
your
making
your
it, man.
mentality?
Yeah, and it's pretty tough. Uh,
I get
I,
it, but
I I've been right there on it. You know what I mean? Uh, I got a pair of F1 Mexican hognose years ago. I mean, years and years and years ago. And I don't know, I couldn't get them to eat. And maybe I wasn't trying the right things. And I gave them damn things pinky tails for months. And they ended up making it. And they ended up surviving. They actually bred for Dr. Laughlin's got them. Ryan, man, what's Ryan's last name? My brain ain't working around. My buddy Ryan had them for a while, and Dr. Laughlin got them. It's an option, but yeah, like you just said, I think you're propagating a problem. There's, there's going to be a day where I produce the best one. I've got to do it. Uh, I remember hearing stories. It might have been Chris Montross was talking about it. Have you ever checked how good a snake swims after it hatches? Have you actually checked the mobility, the quality of the animals that we're producing? And I thought about that. I was like, man, am I just, if I do everything I can to make these animals survive, and then somebody else gets them from me, or I keep them and I breed them again, you're right. Are you just propagating the problem? Uh, there are some species, and I don't work with them, that is the only answer, right? I've heard some of the one of the Othriophis species doesn't like to eat, and you've usually got to start tailing them pretty early because they've got a real fast metabolism. And like you said, your Anchorrhiza, the pig pythons.
Oh, the Mollendorfi, possibly.
I think Mollendorfi have to be brumated to eat.
Yeah, like my friend got some that weren't even feeding, and
Yeah.
she had to brumate them when she got them, and then eventually they got going.
Yeah.
But Mollendorfi are, I kept mine for a year and then gave them back to my friend, and I think they were hardier than people make them out to be.
Yeah.
But they're definitely, like, each animal has their own kind of, like, personality, and, like, they might only eat once every 2 weeks, even though you offer once a week, and the other one will eat everything you feed it except when it's in shed, and
Yeah.
has its own quirks to it. But yeah,
and man, but as far as North American Lampropeltis in the Mexicana group go, I guess there's only one. No, North America's, whatever. But like your Leonis and stuff like that, they can go a long time. Mex can go. So it's Lampropeltis mexicana, the San Luis Potosi king snake. Dude, they can go forever. They can go forever as babies without eating because they come out as little tanks. They look like pythons. So yeah, it just depends. That's a really hard question to answer though, because no, I won't tail them. Some of them just aren't going to make it, and I don't love that answer. I don't even like saying it.
it's not a bad thing. Like I used
Yeah.
to force feed everything after a certain amount of month because I was so afraid, and then I've kind of changed that mentality into I don't force feed, or sorry, assist feed, whatever you want to call it. And if it doesn't make it, it wasn't meant to make it, right? And with carpet pythons, both of them, they tend to live about 6 months. And at the 6 month range is usually when they pass away if they haven't eaten. But the problem is when you pop out something that is like insanely beautiful, or your desired morph, the 1 in 64 that you actually hit, and of course that's the one that won't eat. And then you're like, and every time I've had that situation happen, that is the tiny runt that's 3 years old that looks like the same size as a 6-month-old right now. You know, and it's never a good story. At some point, I just got to accept, you're like, I just got to let it go if it's not going to make it. But I'm the same train of thoughts now. After so many years, I don't want to just keep, I don't know, get him going or keeping him going for no real reason if they have no drive to live.
Yeah, and if you really looked at, even in your case, if you really looked at the statistics, if you really looked at the numbers, most of them eventually eat, most of them make it, and in the wild that's not the case, right? Most of our snakes hatch, right? Most of our females have good clutches, and in the wild that's just not how it works. Most of those females survive laying eggs. Most of those females survive after those babies hatch. That's not the case in the wild. So we're forcing so many different parameters that it's you got to kind of take that step back and say, okay, well, not everything was destined for that 30-year mark, right? And that's why they have these big clutches. Even animals that have small clutches, and Alterna do have smaller clutches. It's just part. It's part of it, and I think you find that after you've done it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? And you stop and you stop and go, okay, well, I think we need to be realistic about this. And people don't want to talk about it because it sucks, right? Like you have a lot of these new breeders or new people to the hobby. They're like, well, you're the one that made that snake breed. You're the one that made that baby hatch, right? You did everything. So now it's on your shoulders to make that baby survives. Well, I'm also going to sell that baby, and I can't make somebody else take care of it. I can't make somebody else listen to me. I can't make it eat when it gets to your house. Michael, if I send you an Alterna, I can't guarantee that it's going to eat when it travels, 3,000 miles. And so there's so many little things in this hobby. Maybe not even little things. They're big subjects. People just don't want to talk about. They don't want to see the realism of it. You're going to have females that don't breed. You're going to have females that die. The best way to kill a female snake is to breed it, right? It's the easiest way to do it. If you got a healthy female that you raise from a baby, you want to kill it, pair it up, right? And look, think about that every time you're pairing your snakes. And because we've all done it. I've had females die egg bound. I've had females die after they laid eggs. I've had females that I had a pair. So I cohab some species, some animals. And I had a pair of corn snakes. These stupid corn snakes, beautiful. These are from North Carolina, Cleveland foothills corn snakes from Kris Painschab. They were cohabbed from babies, and I raised them up, and they didn't breed. I put them down into brumation this year, and John started warming them up, and I cohab a lot of animals in brumation. All of my Pituophis brumate together, right? Like in pairs, right? And I've noticed that I've had the highest level of success with that, and that's something some older gentleman told me to try. And so a lot of my corn snakes I'll cohab when I brumate them. And John is warming them up, and he calls me when he's getting ready to bring snakes over. He's like, Kris, one of your corn snakes is dead. I don't know what happened. And he's like, I'm on the way. He's like, I just noticed it. He's like, it must have just happened. The male had killed the female and started eating her. Corn snake. What?
Oh yeah, I think I've seen corns like the rare time you see like the odd picture. Oh no, there was a post on Facebook I think a week ago.
Yeah.
And it was a baby. It was like a juvenile corn snake eating a neonate king cobra.
What?
Because it was a feeder snake for the king cobra.
That's so
and
wild.
it was eating the king cobra baby. That was hilarious.
These oddities happen.
Is there an advantage though to cohabbing when you're brumating? Like obviously it takes less cages, I guess, or things like that, less room. But I'm trying to think like, would you cohab your Alterna while brumating? To me, that's just a risk for no reason.
Yeah, and no. So any of my Lamprepeltis I don't cohab when I brumate, but I've for 8-10 years I've cohabbed corn snakes and Pituophis when I brumated them, and lots of clutches, and I had one thing happen, right? And it's just weird. We anthropomorphize these things. I did it earlier. They're not smart, right? They're food driven snakes, man. They're and now I'm going to change the way I do things now because of that. But 20 something years in, I'm still learning. A lot of people cohab Pituophis when they brumate them. I've heard of people doing it with Florida kingsnakes too. That just sounds like a recipe for disaster. But yeah, a lot of people with the Pituophis cohab in brumation. So yeah, it's something I've always done, and now I'm with at least my corn snakes. I won't. Pituophis, I'm going to still cohab them in brumation, and I put them in these huge tubs. When we got to fill up an SUV to take them over to John's house, but they're I don't know the size of them, but they're probably 3 foot by 2 foot or 4 foot by 2 foot and deep, and I put lots of aspen in there. But then again, some of these Pituophis are just monsters, so that's a thing. No, I would not brumate Alterna together. Don't do that.
I think. Well, I think we should maybe save Pituophis for another episode, because obviously this is definitely an Alterna episode. If you're okay hanging out for a little bit longer, I think we can maybe hit one more question on how did your Dark Knight line of Alterna start, and what are you kind of hoping to do with that?
So
And for the people
That
who doesn't know, can you explain what the Dark Knight is?
yeah. The Dark Knight. So I had some animals that I got from Justin Smith, and this would be a while ago. That were 3 Mile West locality, and he sent me a wild caught male that his dad had. He had actually gotten from a guy. Andrew Corval is the guy that had caught this male, and he was the 3 Mile West locality. It's right outside of Sanderson. It's a big cut. It's about a quarter of a mile long. It feels like. God, you could walk that cut forever. Seen a mountain lion on that cut. It's pretty scary. Uh, and it's this huge wooded cut, and it produces a bunch of really dark animals. Not all of them are dark, but there's some real dark ones. And man, when you say dingy, that's what we call them. We call them dingy Alterna. One of the snakes that I got from him, I had two F1 females that had been produced by this male that I got from him. She's dark, man. She's almost black on her gray areas, and she's just the coolest looking thing. All of her orange saddles, she's a Blair's face, are muddled with these black flecking, black tipping in her scales. It's real pretty, and I really like that phenotype. And so I bred them for a couple years, and I was man, I'm going to hold back the darkest ones. I want to make the darkest ones. And a buddy of ours, and I'm not going to say his name, had gone through a rough relationship and had bought some snakes from a gentleman named Stuart Tennyson. And he's an old school Alterna guy, and he had this little tiny male that was man, he was a 2013 male, and he was little, and I got him in 2019, I think, and so he was probably 2 foot long, maybe less, 18 inches long, and the snake was black. The whole damn Alterna was black, and I saw that, and I was like, dude, this is so cool. And I messaged him. I was like, that's the coolest Alterna I've ever seen. And he was like, yeah, it started out real light when I got it, but it got darker and darker and darker and darker. And it's like, okay. I was like, what's the locality? What's the information on it? He's all, that's an F1 3 Mile West. And I was like, oh, brother, ship it, right? So I got that male. I put a little bit of weight on him. I let him sit for a year. One thing I'll tell you about Alterna, because I have some Alterna that I bought as adults, they're not going to breed for you that first year. They're probably not going to breed for you that second year. I don't know what it is about Alterna. They need to be in your collection for a while. They need to really maturate in your collection for a while before they'll actually breed. No, they'll breed. I'm sorry, but produce good eggs. That's been a problem with my my West Alpines, my Paisano Pass. I've gotten 2 years of slugs from them. They look great. They're healthy. They eat. They brumate. They shed. They breed. I'm understanding of the fact that for some reason, when Alterna go to different collections, this is true with a lot of the Mexicana, you get slugs the first couple years. I'm not saying that is an always situation. I'm just saying it is a situation that does happen. So, anyways, I digress. So, I got this cool ass black male and this super dark female, so I pair them together. I don't know what's going to happen, but I instantly named him the Dark Knight because this is just he looks like he's got the iridophores of a fuscus, right? Of a Liasis fuscus, the water python. You put him out in the sun and you see all these beautiful rainbow colorations in his scales. And so I paired him to that female, and man, the first year, I got some Blair stuff, and it has, I don't know what is going on with this male, but these babies hatch looking like regular Alterna colors, and within the first 2 years, they are dark, 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 dark. Kevin Barron has some that he's raised up that I sent him. Joe Rosa has some. And dude, if you have a Dark Knight animal, a baby from this male, by year 2, they're a good size animal, but they're just instantly dark. So what I've been doing is holding back the animals with the least amount of pattern. So the males in Alterna phase, the females in Blair's phase, but they do produce both. You'll get some Alterna phase, some Blair's phase. So I've been holding back all of the Alterna phase of that have the least amount of pattern, and I have held a couple back that within a year, dude, they're almost black, right? It's cool. So the future of that project, sadly, I had the best male I ever produced last year, and I mean, he was gonna look like Dad. Oh man, he was cool, and he started turning dark already, and that bastard never ate. And he went into brumation, and he died in brumation. And that was one of those ones that I probably would have tried to tail. And
That's always the nicest.
It's the best one. And then, on top of that, the next gut punch was this year when I bred him, because that female's bred for me for 5 years. She laid a clutch of slugs. So female's already bounced back. She looks great. Male's doing great. I'll pair them up again next year. I think I'll be able to pair my first female that I produced that looks like the male this coming season. That's going to be cool because now I'm going to have two just black animals that I'm going to pair together and hopefully start going that direction. I love selective breeding projects. It's one of my favorite things about the carpet python world. Is so many of those lines are phenotypically selectively bred traits. There, of course, there's morphs and stuff in there. But dude, some of the stuff in the carpet python world. Same thing with leopard geckos. People don't talk about that enough. Dude, there's people out there that spent 20 years on a line of leopard geckos that have no morphs in them at all. They're just the coolest looking things. So that's I have a bunch of little projects. I like to create little projects within my projects. That is one of my kind of most exciting ones, and it's the Dark Knight project. And I hope everybody that has those animals, they're big, healthy. They usually eat really easily. Of course, I had that one male that was an ass, but out of all my Alterna, they've been the easiest to get going. And I think that's true of most Eastern range animals. But God, the second I say that, somebody's going to message me and say, "No, you're an idiot." And man, even breeding Alterna for maybe 6 years or 7 years, I think it's 6 years. I still question myself on them. There's just so many people that have been doing this for 30, 40 years. John's been doing this for 30, 40 years, and he's still, oh, well, you need to try this. Oh, well, you need to try this. You need to try this. I'm like, dude, you're constantly learning. The second you think you have everything figured out in this hobby, hang it up and go do something else. Go join Wall Street. If you can figure this out, you can figure anything out. And I don't think any of us will ever. We'll constantly be learning. That's one of the things Craig talked to me about on my podcast was every day is a new adventure. Every day is a new set of problems. Every day is a new discovery. So don't ever give that up. And when you do, you're going to get stagnant. You're going to get bored. When you think you've got everything figured out, you just, you know what I mean? You probably don't. Try something different. I just think that's part of it.
Awesome. That was. I think we should almost end on that because that was a pretty good explanation there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
On that, I'll do a little bit more on that tangent too. Also, don't give up. There's some species you're not going to be able to breed, right? You're not going to be able to do it. You're living in an area where the parameters are just not going to get met. I've had Pitiophis vertebralis for 10 years now. And man, I read every book. I talked to everybody that had bred them. And my snakes didn't breed till they were 6 years old. But now I've got eggs every year. And I've got them dialed in. And I've got 3.3 now. I'll be producing. I got a male I held back. I'll be producing second generation in a year or two. Just take your time. Don't give up. It's not your snake's fault or your gecko's fault or your lizard or your turtle's fault. It's your fault, right? You're missing something, so don't give up. Find out what it is. If you truly have passion with the species, if you truly love something, you do, you'll know, right? If that's the one for you and it's just not clicking, figure it out. If you want to keep those desert species down here in Corpus Christi, get a dehumidifier, right? Add more holes, add more ventilation, change the way you're keeping that animal. If you're in Arizona and you want to breed cave geckos, add another air conditioning unit to that room. Get a humidifier, right? Just create the complexity for yourself, and don't stop. The second you stop, the second you give up, is when false information gets spread. That's when people carpet pythons are nasty. They all bite. They all suck. You don't want to mess with those. I remember that. 1999, seeing them at a reptile show, seeing diamond pythons.
A lot of people still believe that.
Yeah, green tree pythons. Dominic, if you're my age or close, you remember back in the 90s.
I'm older.
You're not going to be able to breed green tree pythons. You just can't do it. They just die. They throw up, they die, or emerald tree boas throw up and die.
Back then, people couldn't even breed ball pythons.
Yeah, they just came in imports, right? And it's like, no. Look, you're not gonna have success with every swing, but god damn, does hitting that home run feel good? It's just the best thing you have. And then don't do it alone. Share that information with others. Get on podcasts. Reach out to people. Ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask people questions. People are so damn scared. Message me. Message Dominic. Message Michael. Message Craig Trumbauer with the question. He will answer your questions. Right? It's the love of it, man. We do this as a community because without the community, this is done. Right? This is the damn near the dumbest hobby you could have. And if you want to do this full time, reach out to the people that have done it full time and figure that out. You do the math, figure it out. It's going to be harder than probably anything you've ever done, I would think. But every single dream you have in this hobby is possible, but it's only possible with the community. And really, I try to push that a lot. And don't give up, and don't let that. You're going to have those heartbreaks. But as somebody who with my wife, we struggled with infertility for a long time, and I've got a little girl bouncing around my house, and it took a long time. And you know what? We didn't give up, and we needed a community to make that happen. And there's also other avenues, right? There's books, there's literature, there's Reptiles Magazine articles, there's kingsnake.com forums. There's these people were writing books on this stuff in the 60s and 70s. There's so much out there. So I don't know. That's my little spiel on that.
That's a good way to end it. And you know what? Victory is a lot better.
It's a fantastic spiel.
Victory is so much better when you put some sweat equity into it,
Yeah, absolutely.
Michael,
really
anything else you want to talk about before we start closing it?
I think I'm good for now, but obviously, we gotta have Kris on again in the future and maybe hit more of pits and mill more of them. But this was an awesome episode on Alterna that I think everybody should really appreciate.
Yeah.
So Dominic, do you want to hit the closing? Or no, first, Kris, do you want to share how people can get a hold of you?
Yeah. So you can reach out my Facebook, just Kris Painschab. I have it spelled out here on the video. That's probably the fastest way to get a hold of me. Through Instagram. My brand name is Badlands Herpeticulture, and I have a Facebook for Badlands Herpeticulture. I will always respond to messages. I got hit with the no bat too many times on Facebook for Badlands Herpeticulture, so I don't post anything there anymore. But my Instagram, I try to post. I'm not very good at social media. That's part of being a little bit older and trying to raise my kid to not think about social media. But I will always answer any questions anybody has. So Badlands Herpeticulture on Instagram. I think it's Badlands _ Herpeticulture. Also, if you just put my name, Kris Painschab, into Instagram, it'll pop up, and then Facebook. And then I do a couple podcasts. I haven't been on the Herpeticulture Network too much, but I did all the corn stars, with the exception of the first episode. We don't talk about that episode. And then also Kingsnake Chronicles. We've done a few episodes. We've had Alterna, Leonis, and a couple other things. And again, if you want to reach me through there, you can reach out to the Herpeticulture Network, and Justin and the boys will get you a hold of me. And I love answering questions. I've made so many friends. Michael, I think that's how we became friends. Was we just started messaging each other, and I'm a chatty bitch.
Oh yeah,
right? I like to talk. So obviously, I mean, I could. We're at 2 hours and 17 minutes. I could go another 2 or 3 hours. So,
and that's what makes you a great podcast guest.
And I'll come back on and we'll. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say we're definitely going to have you on. I just wanted to say a gigantic thank you. You're a wealth of knowledge. That was amazing. You've I'm entertained just by listening to you. So it was really great. Great information on Alterna, and a million thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to say before I close it out?
Thank you guys. Keep it up. The first few episodes are always tough. Once you guys get in stride with things, you're going to do great things. So keep doing it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kris.
And I apologize for episode 2's bad audio. As you can tell, I got a new mic, so we're hoping that it'll be better on this one. And again, everybody, I want to thank everybody for joining us. If you can, just a quick little spiel. If you can go on Spotify, Apple Music, if you want to go on YouTube, anything, a thumbs up or a follow would really help us, because I think we're at about 3 or 4 followers. Anything more would definitely help. Instagram, Reptile Rejects. You can reach Michael on Facebook under his name, Michael Gillian. You can reach me on Facebook under my name, Dominic Carbonneau, or you can reach me on Insta under Dom's Reptiles. Except for that, everybody, gigantic thank you for listening. And next week we should have a pretty good guest. If you watched it on YouTube, you'll probably know who it is because he jumped in for a few seconds accidentally. So again, everybody, thank you. Have a good night, and we'll chat later.